everybody else, if you write yes on a visa application, you will be chucked out of the United States. You will be denied entry. So I think this is fascinating that on this issue of whether there is a stigma for Harry or not, he can have his law enforcement records not released into the public domain.
The bottom line is, do we want him back?
So what's interesting is it seems to be becoming a political dividing line in the States because Biden is the administration trying to do Harry a favour by keeping them under wraps, but Trump has promised that he will, you know, that the file will be made public if he wins again.
Trump's been very strong on this. He said, you know, if Harry lied, then he's out.
The one thing about America is their politicians make ours look sane. Which is saying something.
I'm slightly confused about this whole story because, OK, sure, Prince Harry has said this. How many pop stars, rock stars, movie stars, like every
the difference is, well, I don't think it's just a British. I think millions of Brits, to be fair to them, lie on the form every year. Millions of people from around the world lie on the form every year. Not, of course.
I'm not going to name any pop star specifically, but I would be mightily surprised if any hadn't indulged in what.
Yes, but of course they haven't given written evidence in their biography that they have, and that's the difference.
Britain's election channel.
Good morning, 9:30 on Wednesday, the 5th of June. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Thank you for joining us. So, D-Day commemorations begin. The King, Queen and Prime Minister in Portsmouth today for an event marking the 80th anniversary of the Normandy landings.
There's going to be plenty of events in Normandy too to pay respect to our fallen heroes.
And Starmer on the ropes. The Prime Minister and Sir Keir Starmer clashed over tax, the NHS and immigration last night in the first TV debate of the election campaign. Was there really any winner? What did you make of it?
And do you remember those runaway horses? Well, we've got some great news about 3 of the household cavalry horses that were injured after they bolted through central London in April, so stay tuned for that. You know, I think it's really significant about Portsmouth and then Normandy tomorrow. The King is leading the world in these celebrations. This is his first international event since his diagnosis of cancer. So I think that's really significant.
It really is, isn't it?
And really important.
And talking about people who are leading the world, Nigel Farage, of course, got a milkshake in his face yesterday. We're going to be looking at the fallout from that. And also, Richard Tice is going to be here in the studio, of course, of Reform Party. He's not happy with you.
Apparently.
Andrew's written a piece in the Mail today explaining how Nigel managed to take over the head of the Reform Party. You don't want to miss that. They're going to be having a very frank debate about it. gbnews.com/your say to let us know your thoughts this morning. First, though, your very latest news with Sophia Wensler.
Bev, thank you. Good morning. It's 9:30. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. The Conservatives are standing by Rishi Sunak's claim that Labour would raise taxes if Sir Keir Starmer became Prime Minister. Labour insists the claim is a lie. It comes as both leaders traded blows on the economy, the NHS and immigration as they faced off in the first TV debate of the 2024 election campaign. Rishi Sunak claimed Sir Keir Starmer would raid pension pots and hike taxes by £2,000 per household. But the leaders' differences will be put to one side as the D-Day Normandy landings are remembered. The nation is coming together today in Portsmouth to honour troops who crossed the Channel 80 years ago as they headed into the battle of a lifetime. Both Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer will attend the UK's national commemorative event in Portsmouth alongside the King, the Queen and the Prince of Wales and Armed Forces veterans. Meanwhile, across the Channel, Normandy prepares to honour the D-Day legacy and US President Joe Biden has arrived to take part in the commemorations. And the first banknotes carrying the portrait of King Charles will go into circulation today. Notes that feature Queen Elizabeth II will remain legal tender and co-circulate alongside the King. The new ones will only be printed to replace those that are worn or to meet an overall increase in demand in order to minimise the environmental and financial impact of the change. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
Very good morning. This is Britain's Newsroom. We are just digesting our sausage rolls that we stole from Eamon Holmes. Very nice it was as well.
Well, they were 14. I don't think even Eamon could eat that many.
Thank you for joining us. It's 9:33. So the Prime Minister and the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, faced off in a last night's TV debate. It's the first of the general election campaign that clashed on tax, immigration and the state of the NHS.
Well,
who did you think came out on top, Andrew?
I tell you what I think Sunak won, because he managed to land the blow that he wanted to, that if you vote Labour, you're going to get a big tax bill. And it took it was about halfway through the debate, or even longer, before Starmer finally said, these figures aren't right.
Yeah.
Why didn't he challenge it immediately? So he had a free run on tax, which is why the headlines, Labour accused on tax in the Times, Telegraph, Starmer on the ropes on tax.
Because this is about the £2,000 extra tax that Sunak was saying that people would pay under Labour. It's actually over 4 years.
It is.
I don't know why Keir Starmer didn't say that. Why didn't he say it might be that you have to pay that, but it's over 4 years? And if that means you get better public services, if that means you can see your NHS, it might be that you'd be prepared to pay that
Well,
tax.
he was flat-footed and leaden. And when you consider he's the lawyer... I know Sunak's been Prime Minister for nearly 2 years now?
Yeah.
But I think that's... Sunak wanted to label him as the high tax man, and he succeeded in that respect. Although, of course, the moment when the audience laughed was at Sunak over NHS waiting lists.
And national service.
Yeah.
And national service as well. When he said about national service policy, the audience laughed like that was a bit of a joke.
Yeah.
Neither of them, I didn't think, were deeply impressive. Did you? GBNews.com/your say. And I got a little irritated, I have to say, with Julie Etchingham trying to calm them down. Let's be civil, lower your voices. No! Let them at it. We want to see what they're like under pressure. Let them take bites out of each other.
It was a bit like Mum at the dinner table, wasn't it? Saying to the two kids, will you lower your voices?
Yes. Well, let's use our indoor voices is kind of what she was saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, we want to know what you think. GBNews.com/your say. So Portsmouth is taking centre stage this morning for the 80th anniversary of D-Day commemorations.
King Charles and Queen Camilla will attend the event marking the Normandy landings, along with high-profile politicians, including the Prime Minister and Leader of the Opposition.
So let's cross live now to our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, who is there this morning. Mark, what have you got for us?
Yes, good morning. An absolutely beautiful day here in Southsea. It wasn't quite as beautiful yesterday, but the sun has really come out shining today. Just perfect for the veterans for this special event to mark the 80th anniversary of D-Day. And we're very privileged to be able to speak to the Chief of the General Staff, the British Army, General Sir Patrick Sanders. General, thank you very much indeed for speaking to us. Just how special is this? We thought the 75th anniversary would effectively be the last hurrah for these veterans.
Thanks, Mark. Well, it's fabulous to be here. And as you say, the weather rather contradicts what happened in history, because, of course, this so nearly didn't happen 80 years ago. And the gamble that Eisenhower took with the weather paid off. But it was a very, very different set of circumstances 80 years ago. And what always strikes me about these events is that this is living memory. You know, people who took part are alive today, and for many of the younger generation, this feels like ancient history, and of course it's not. You know, it really happened. So it's fantastic to be able to share it with the veterans who took part, but it's also important that all of us as a nation remembers the courage, the sacrifice, but the extraordinary national endeavour that went into this, you know, the largest amphibious operation in history.
It was, as you say, an extraordinary amphibious operation, supported, of course, by the RAF, the Army, the spearhead of this, going on to those beaches, the biggest component part of the British military in the D-Day operations. But getting onto those 5 beaches, that was only the start of it. It was a really difficult campaign for there on to take on the Germans in their dug-in positions.
Yeah, and it's also, before we talk about Normandy and the Normandy campaign, it's worth remembering that as this was going on, we had just had the end of the Battle for Monte Cassino, the Battle for Rome, so you had a British army, an Allied army fighting its way all the way up Italy. So there was terrible fighting going on right across Europe. For the soldiers going ashore, and indeed the aircrew that made this possible, and the sailors who had to negotiate mines, you know, you've got to put yourself in their shoes and imagine what it feels like on the eve of this great battle, this great endeavour, and the fear that must have been in their stomach, the nervousness, the anticipation. And then once they got ashore, they had to deal with the battle for Caen, terrible urban fighting. They had to fight their way through what was called the bocage, so this very, very close country of hedges, of small hills in Normandy, with the Germans incredibly well prepared with their defences. And we took terrible levels of casualties over the course of the 2 months of that fighting before we finally get to the Battle of Falaise, and we've conquered, we've won the battle.
Yeah, I mean, the attrition rate, I think, in terms of casualties was equivalent to World War I in terms of what we were seeing in those 2 months.
Yeah. I mean, it was very, very tough, difficult fighting. And for the first few days, it was nip and tuck. We got 150,000 people onto 5 beaches in the first 24 hours. But there was no guarantee that we would be able to stay there. And an amphibious operation is at its most perilous, it's most vulnerable when you've got that foothold, but you haven't been able to expand the bridgehead so you can defend it. So it was desperate fighting for the first few days.
And it is really humbling, isn't it, to listen to the stories of these men now in their late 90s, some over 100, infirm, clearly because of their age, but so absolutely vivid in what they remember from those times.
Yeah, and when you talk to them, you feel the sense of pride in their achievement, their generational achievement coming off them. But what I find is the sense of compassion and loss as well, because of course, as soldiers, we remember those who didn't make it, those people that we left behind, those people who are forever young. And that's often the way, those are the people that the veterans celebrate and honour, and that's why they want to be here in Southsea and in Normandy later on today.
And how important is it to remember the events, not just for themselves, but because, there's added resonance for where we are now in terms of the world. It's a much less safe place in recent years. We've got wars raging in Ukraine, the wars in the Middle East, a belligerent China and the like. The world is facing some difficult challenges in the years ahead.
Yeah, and it's worth that's why it's so important to remember that, as you say, the Army might have been at the tip of the spear, as was the Air Force and the Navy, but behind that, you had a whole-of-nation effort. I mean, D-Day, all of the operations that we conducted in the Second World War were operations that were underpinned by the whole of the nation. So armies might win battles, might be the first ones to start fighting in a war, but it's nations that win wars. And we need to get ourselves into a position where we recall that it is cheaper and better to be prepared for war and avoid war by being prepared rather than having to fight one. And so investing in defence and making sure that we increase our national preparedness feels like the right thing to do in these dangerous times.
Well, of course, these veterans know more than most the need to be prepared to take on an aggressive enemy such as Germany then. Is this, do you think, likely to be the last time that we see a major D-Day commemoration with significant veteran involvement?
Well, we said that on the 75th anniversary 5 years ago, didn't we? And here we are. I think the reality is that it's unlikely we're going to have many surviving D-Day veterans for much longer. So I intend to focus on today, on celebrating their achievements, and for the nation to pay our respects to them.
Okay, General Sir Patrick Sanders, we really appreciate you spending a few minutes with us to reflect on this special day. Thank you very much. And say just the Chief of the General Staff there, just one of some very senior military personnel who will be here alongside the civilian VIPs. Of course, we've got the King and the Queen, the Prince of Wales, and the senior politicians, including the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition, for that event that takes place in just over an hour's time from now. So a really special couple of hours ahead, as about 20 of those veterans will be welcomed here to commemorate the events that they saw 80 years ago.
OK, thank you so much, Mark. Mark White there. What a beautiful day down there as well.
Extraordinary, isn't it, to think 80 years on, they're still with us.
Yeah, they're amazing, aren't they? None of this
Amazing.
snowflake. I'm having a tough day. I need a day off because life is difficult, honestly. Let's cross live now to Normandy and speak to our reporter, Sophie Reaper. Good morning, Sophie. There on the shoreline, from what I can see. What's happening there today?
Well, a very good morning to you both. It's really rather a beautiful day here in Arromanches on the Normandy coastline as well. Just over here, we're on Gold Beach today, one of the 5 beaches that was taken on D-Day. Over to the left, you would find, along that part of the coastline, you would find Omaha and Utah Beach, which were the 2 beaches stormed by American troops. Then if you follow the coastline along, you would come to Juno Beach, which was the beach stormed by Canadians, as well as Sword Beach, which, along with this beach here at Gold, were the 2 beaches stormed by our very own British troops. Now, here in Arromanches, it's really quite a special place. It played a very special part in D-Day, and that is because it was where the Mulberry Harbour, an artificial port, was installed, and that you can still see some of the remnants of the Mulberry Harbour along the coastline, just in the channel there in the distance, and that played an incredible part in D-Day because it allowed over 9,000 tonnes of material to be delivered to the beaches every single day once D-Day had commenced. So it played a really important role in helping our troops land on D-Day and continue trying to take it back from those Nazi forces. Now, today in Arromanches, as has been throughout the rest of the week, we will be seeing thousands and thousands of people descending upon this beach, as well as the other beaches along the Normandy coastline. Today, it's our understanding that there's going to be a recreation here on Gold Beach. We can't actually show you the beach at the minute because the tide is right in, but you can see thousands of people already starting to gathering here along Arromanches, preparing for that as they celebrate and commemorate D-Day in their own unique and special way.
Terrific.
Thank you, Sophie. We're quite jealous, aren't we, that they are
extraordinary
out there in the sunshine, celebrating
also
with those amazing people.
Part of history.
Yeah.
And it's going to be like no other because they're not going to get to the 90th, are they, these men? And let's not forget the women involved too, some of those fabulous women that we've been talking to here on GB News are involved, particularly in the intelligence corps at Bletchley Park and other such places. Right, still to come, don't go anywhere. It's been a busy few days for the Chairman of Reform UK, Richard Tice. We've got some questions for him next. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but it's actually about you.
And we won't ever forget that. Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
Now, more than ever, it's important to hear
all sides as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you. This is GB News.
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mervyn Kirsch was a boy when the war began. By D-Day, he was trained and ready to fight after years waiting.
It was taking a long time. I suppose I was an agitator.
He remembers reality unfolding to the sound of thumping guns.
In the morning, about 5 o'clock, they woke me up to say we were going towards France now, and I could see the outline in the dawn. And I could hear couldn't see, but I could hear the shells, big shells going overhead both ways. Nobody was bothering to fire at me, which was quite good. Then I began to feel nervous, and I sort of realised it's not just an adventure, it's actual world war.
Mervyn served in the Ordnance Regiment. His job was to get supplies like ammunition and vehicles onto the beach. When an advance party, including some of his friends, were destroyed, Mervyn stepped up.
The head of me went a reconnaissance unit. We were supposed to go on D+6. The reconnaissance unit was going D+2 to find a suitable site for 200 drivers and 1,000 vehicles, which we were going to stock, all kinds. They went across, but they didn't get across. They were torpedoed, the only boat torpedoed that day. I was put on a boat that night, any boat, going across and told us by an suitable site for vehicles of men. So I just crossed over them and I landed, got to the top of the cliff and just, with a strange driver in a tracked vehicle, told him just to drive down one of the roads and see what we can find.
The People's Channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, joining us in the studio is the newly deposed leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice, who now has the grand title of chairman. Who gave you that title, Richard?
Well, it's
Did the members give you that? Did the members give you that title?
Absolutely. I'm on top form.
Good.
I've been roaring with laughter all morning.
Good.
Because the thing is, it's great when you read about yourself.
Yeah.
And it's even funnier when it's written by someone who claims to be a serious journalist.
Personal abuse, Richard, gets you nowhere.
But you've had your say.
Yeah.
When actually the information contained therein is so inaccurate.
Right.
If it had been written by one of your trainees, you'd have fired them.
Right.
So let's just run through it. So, you said I was blindsided.
Yeah.
We've been talking about this for months.
When did he tell you?
Okay. Well, you said it was a coup.
When did he tell you?
We've agreed this. It was all of it.
When did he tell you?
We talked about it.
When did he tell you, Richard?
Right. Your details are all completely wrong.
Right.
Okay. So first of all, we agreed this months ago.
Right.
I've been urging him to do it.
Right.
So it was just a matter of timing and when. Okay.
Right.
You then said that I was in Skegness.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't. I was in London.
Right.
Right. You said that Ben Habib was rushed back to be there. Ben wasn't there.
Right.
I was in London.
Yeah.
You then said that, in a sense, we were astounded. We had agreed. I had been urging.
When did he tell you?
We agreed it
When
some
did he
time
tell you?
ago, and I was urging him to push on, to change the decision. I urged. And the great thing is, when we actually went to it, we talked about it on Friday, we talked about it on Saturday, we knew we had to get on with it, and so it was great. The only thing is, and you saw it yesterday, Andrew, which is the key thing that was holding back the decision was actually, I think, security. And you saw it yesterday about the security.
Well, and that was disgraceful.
And that was disgraceful. So, but the point is, if you're going to write stuff based on sources, surely a good journalist would make it accurate. If there's 10 separate bits in the paper, in the first column, that's completely inaccurate, Andrew,
Richard,
surely the thing to do, if you're that inaccurate, isn't the thing to do to apologise?
No, Richard, the point about this story is this. You don't work for a political party. It's a company. What other political party can have a leadership change on the say-so of one person? Was the membership consulted? No. Were the other people, were members of the party consulted? Was Ben Habib the deputy consulted? The whole point. So Nigel Farage owns Reform UK. Richard, hang on. Nigel Farage owns Reform UK.
It is
hang on, Richard.
No, Andrew,
Richard,
you can't have a coup if it's been
you've had your say.
People.
Richard, 53% of Reform UK is owned by Nigel Farage. No other political party in Europe operates like Reform UK.
No other political
it is a company.
No other political party has achieved our success. Yeah. So and the reason for that
are you comfortable with Nigel Farage owning Reform?
I'm thrilled to bits.
53% shareholding.
Why do you think we've been
so he
so
calls
successful?
the shots just
it's
like
funny
that.
Because why do you think we've been so
how successful have you been?
Well,
how many councillors have you got?
We've gone from
how many
0,
councillors have you got?
Andrew, we've gone from 0
how many
to
councillors have you got, Richard?
In 3 years.
How many members have you got,
And
Richard?
we are terrifying the Tories,
Richard,
right?
So let's answer the question.
I'm going to come back to this.
How many councillors
Andrew.
have you got?
It's irrelevant. What matters,
it's irrelevant.
What
how many
matters,
members have you
Andrew,
got, Richard?
Is we've terrified the Tories.
How many members have you got?
Us.
You won't answer basic questions.
How many members have we got?
Yeah.
We've got tens of thousands.
How many? Richard, how many?
Since Monday, we've had over 6,000.
How many members have you got?
The thing is, Andrew...
You won't tell us. It is not a proper, democratic, transparent political party.
How can you say that when people are voting in their millions?
Listed at Companies House, run by one man who's a shareholder.
And you're a Companies House.
It is... Rishi Sunak
how
is not...
embarrassing. You're supposed to be a journalist, but you can't get anything
Rishi
right.
Sunak is not a 53% shareholder of the Tory party.
Rishi Sunak was not appointed by his members, Andrew. I'm sorry to say, if you're going to be a serious journalist, you've got to be accurate in what you write.
Let me
Seriously,
just...
I mean, it's hysterical. Right. It's like a comic piece.
Let me just ask this, because does it matter to the voting public whether you are a company?
Not at all.
Or whether you are
Not at all.
an old-fashioned
It's only the terrified
political
Tories.
party?
It makes no difference at all. It's only the terrified Tories who are struggling with the concept that actually we've got real conservative values. We've got the people on our side. Millions of people are saying, and something's happening out there. Millions are saying, I want another choice. There it is. That's great. I like what they're saying. They tell it as it is. And I'm going to vote for them. And it's going to be extraordinary. And what the Tories are not going to like is when we get close to them in the polls and potentially on polling day get as many votes cast or potentially more. And that's the extraordinary opportunity.
Yeah,
and that's the joy of democracy.
Yeah, look, we heard that in 2015 with UKIP, and you had 4 million votes and you got 1 MP.
Nigel's going to stand in a seat. You're standing in a seat. Ben Habib is standing in a seat. What are the quality of your other candidates like? Because they have to win people over on the doorstep.
Absolutely. And look, in any political party, you'll have candidates that people know, you'll have great candidates, you'll have good candidates. We're a relatively new party, but actually what people are voting for, they're voting for change. And that's why, because people recognise the status quo is high taxes, big state, massive immigration, and people don't want it. And that's why... That's why people are saying, what else is out there? Here's the other thing, Andrew.
How much more are you going to lend the party?
We've got thousands...
You haven't told us how many members. You have... The loans are there, 1.4 million.
If Nigel...
So inaccurate is your detail...
1.4 million? Is it 2.4 million now?
Andrew, so inaccurate is your detail...
Yeah.
Right? You're 30% wrong.
Right.
And I haven't lent anything to the party since 2022. So if you're going to be a journalist...
No, I said, no, Richard, I said at the end of 20... No, Richard, you can be as abusive as you like. Richard, I said quite clearly, at the end of last year, the party owed you 1.4 million. Why haven't you made it as a donation?
Again,
don't you trust them?
Andrew...
Can you take the money back at any time?
You're well over 30%.
This is a plaything for you and Farage, isn't it, Reform?
This is a
plaything.
Political...
It is not... Well, why don't you run it as a proper political party with a proper constitution? We know how many members there are. Members who have a say. Members who have a say in policy.
Have you read our constitution? We have a constitution. Right. We have members. But the problem is
why don't you tell us how many?
Because you write gossip and jokes, you don't write a serious piece with serious information.
Why don't you tell us how many members? Why don't you tell us how many members you've got?
We've had over 6,000.
Right.
Just literally in the last 2 days. How many did the Tories mark? When did the Tories last tell you how many members they've got?
I thought you were trying to do things differently to the Tories, Richard.
So, but you can't try and compare us to the existing...
Labour would tell you they've got 450,000. The Liberals will tell you they've got 250,000. Why don't you tell us how many you've got?
We've got tens of thousands of members. We'll confirm it when we're ready.
Right.
What made Nigel change his mind from I'm not going to stand because America is as important as here to changing his mind?
Look, as he's absolutely rightly said, Sunak jumped to the election because... he was worried about the rise of reform and because he was worried that Rwanda wouldn't be a deterrent. And the judgment for Nigel was do we go for it full steam ahead? We'd agreed the plan ages ago. It was all about timing. And then he said, yes, no, do I, don't I? And here's the other thing. So we knew from early January about the polling in the particular constituency because that was all over the sun. Oh, it was another error of yours. You said it was in February. It wasn't in secret. It was in January. Right. Yeah. Look, the reality is, when we were campaigning last week on Friday, the noise and the enthusiasm was extraordinary. So we talked on Friday night about some details. We talked to...
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In South Lanarkshire, the A749 is closed each way along Stonelaw Road in Rutherglen after a lorry hit the railway bridge. In County Durham, the A66 is closed eastbound from Bowes to Barnard Castle after an accident. The M66 in Greater Manchester is partly blocked southbound by an accident between junctions 1 and 2 from Ramsbottom to Bury, causing queues. In Cheshire, the A34 is closed each way along Ainsley Way at Handforth after an accident. On the M1 in Derbyshire, there are southbound delays from the Tibshelf services to junction 28 at Alfreton after an investigation. There are delays of up to an hour and 20 minutes with some cancelled trains from Watford Junction and Euston Station in London after an investigation. And on the M3 in Surrey, 3 out of 4 lanes are closed southbound where a vehicle caught fire between junctions 3 and 4 from Bagshot to Camberley, causing long delays. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
We've got summer sewn up with an incredible trio of treats, and you could win them. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. Fun in the sun could be on us. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Chairman of Reform. Well, what do we call you now?
Chairman.
You are the chair.
Or are you a chair?
Winning
or are you a chair?
No, I'm a chairman.
Very good to hear it.
Woman is.
Very glad to hear
it.
Yes, I certainly do. Let's ask you about the unacceptable face of campaigning yesterday when Farage was, not for the first time, attacked by a woman with a milkshake. Richard, that could have been much more serious.
Yeah, it's horrific. It happened in 2019 when we were in Newcastle, I think it was. And it is very scary because you don't know what it is, and obviously the fear is it's something dangerous, something chemical. So it's a very scary moment, and the impact it's why it's such a difficult decision for someone like Nigel to say, yeah, I want to go for this again, because you've got all of that, and it's bad news for democracy if well-known people are then. Terrified, not terrified, but are essentially prevented from campaigning.
Because everyone won't necessarily have seen what happened yesterday. Yeah. Let's just show people at home what happened to Nigel in Clacton yesterday.
My milkshake brings all the people to the rally.
That was Nigel's TikTok response, and that is where he is different to everybody else. Because do you know what my teenagers said last night? Nigel Farage is so cool, Mummy. I saw the TikTok that he did where he got the milkshake in his face. That is so different to how Sunak and Starmer would have responded to that.
Completely, because what you don't know when it happens at the moment is, do you wipe it away? Do you dab it away? What is it?
Is it acid?
Those are all the sort of... And so... it's a scary thing, and I think people should respect that, and we're very grateful that I think both Sunak and, was it Yvette Cooper?
Yeah, they made
very main parties, condemned the activity, the actions, and it should be condemned, and frankly, I mean, just whoever she is, just a juvenile moron. The thing is, actually, we will get hundreds of thousands of more votes. Based on the fact that people think this is wrong. This is not how to conduct a democratic debate.
And there is suspicion that she is attached to sympathy to the Labour Party. But the worry about this, Richard, is that some politicians who don't really want to engage with the public, like Farage does, will think they can withdraw.
Yeah, and that's terrible. No one benefits from that, because there are too many people who already think, well, I never see my MPs. Do I trust them? They don't do what we ask them to do. And so if people withdraw and are less accessible, then that problem becomes even greater. And, we have seen 2 murders in recent years, tragically, of MPs, not well-known MPs, well-loved MPs, of course. And so it's very grim, it's very tough, and I know that that's why actually it's been such a big, monumental decision to say, I'm going to go back on the front line, commit for a period of time, and go for it. And it's a real thing, and that's why the whole standing thing is so significant. It's one thing doing an air war. It's another thing standing right on the front line.
Was he all right yesterday after that milkshake? Was he shaken up by it?
Yes,
Nigel Farage?
obviously everybody's shaken up by it, but once you know it's not acid, you just got to push on, and you saw him brilliantly enjoying a milkshake.
And
he turns adversity to his advantage.
If you've been that divisive and that unpopular for so long, nothing touches you. I mean, metaphorically, he's fearless, and that's where he's different.
But the popularity is changing so rapidly, and that's what we saw on Friday and Saturday, and that was really influential and very exciting.
Richard Tice, good to see you. Right, as you heard, Nigel Farage will stand as Reform's UK candidate in Clacton, so we will give you the full list of those who have declared so far. Yovana Wasu-Nepal from the Labour Party, Giles Watling from the Conservative Party,
I can't read
Matthew Bensalem from Liberal Democrats,
there we are.
Nigel Farage from Reform UK, and Natasha Osborne of the Green Party. And there may be more candidates because the deadline isn't until later this week, and GBNews has extended an interview to all of those candidates. Right, let's get your headlines. Sophia Wensler is here with the news.
Bev, thank you. From the GB Newsroom at 4 minutes past 10, your top story this hour. The Conservatives are standing by Rishi Sunak's claim that Labour would raise taxes if Sir Keir Starmer became Prime Minister. Labour insists the claim is a lie. It comes as both leaders traded blows on the economy and immigration as they faced off in the first TV debate of the 2024 election campaign. Rishi Sunak claimed Sir Keir Starmer would raid pension pots and hike taxes by £2,000 per household. The cost of living also came up, as did the NHS, which Sir Keir Starmer said is broken.
It's unforgivable what's happened to the NHS, and to come into power for 14 years and leave the NHS in a worse state than when you found it is unforgivable in politics. And Rishi Sunak stood 18 months ago, Janet, and said that those waiting lists, which are now nearly 8 million, he said he'll get them down. He made a promise. He said he'd be held accountable. They were 7.2 million at the time. Now they're 7.5 million. So they've gone up, and that bears down on the NHS.
Meanwhile, Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho reiterated the Prime Minister's message.
Keir Starmer couldn't do is he couldn't rule out the fact that his policies, as set out by the Labour Party, would cost families £2,000 in extra taxes. And he couldn't rule out the fact that pensioners for the first time under Labour plans would have to pay tax on their state pension next year. And actually, that's the substance of what people are choosing between. And I really thought, actually, it was quite shocking that on all of those major issues, Keir Starmer was woolly. He didn't have any clear plans or proposals to address some of the challenges that the country is facing.
But the leaders' differences will be put to one side as the D-Day Normandy landings are remembered. The nation is coming together today in Portsmouth to honour troops who crossed the Channel 80 years ago as they headed into the battle of a lifetime. Both Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer will attend the UK's national commemoration event in Portsmouth alongside the King, Queen and Prince of Wales and Armed Forces veterans. Meanwhile, across the Channel, Normandy prepares to honour the D-Day legacy, and US President Joe Biden has arrived to take part in the commemorations. Chief of the General Staff, Sir Patrick Sanders, who's in Portsmouth, has told GB News about the jeopardy of D-Day.
So nearly didn't happen 80 years ago, and the gamble that Eisenhower took with the weather paid off, but it was a very, very different set of circumstances 80 years ago. And what always strikes me about these events is that this is living memory. People who took part are alive today, and for many of the younger generation, this feels like ancient history, and of course it's not. It really happened. So it's fantastic to be able to share it with the veterans who took part, but it's also important that all of us as a nation remembers the courage, the sacrifice, the extraordinary national endeavour that went into this, the largest amphibious operation in history.
In other news, First Minister of Wales has insisted he is feeling confident about winning the vote of no confidence he faces in the Senedd later today. Welsh Conservatives tabled a motion of no confidence in Vaughan Gething following the collapse of the cooperation deal between Labour and Plaid Cymru and a series of rows. Concerns were raised after Mr Gething accepted a donation from a man convicted of environmental offences. Mr Gething has also refused to show any evidence to explain why he sacked Senedd member Hannah Blythe from his government after he accused her of leaking messages to the media. And the first banknotes carrying the portrait of King Charles will go into circulation today. Notes that feature Queen Elizabeth II will remain legal tender and co-circulate alongside the King. The new ones will only be printed to replace those that are worn or to meet any overall increase in demand in order to minimise the environmental and financial impact of the change. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
It's 10:08, you're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner. We are on the eve, of course, of D-Day celebrations, which is why Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer are taking a break from their election campaigning. That's a relief for us too,
I bet they're delighted.
Because they're going to be joining the King later this morning in marking the 80th anniversary of D-Day on the south coast of England.
So let's cross live now to our Home and Security editor, Mark White, who is in Portsmouth. What's happening there, Mark? Beautiful day.
Yes, absolutely. The excitement really building here and the crowds already gathering, awaiting, of course, the arrival of His Majesty the King and Queen and, of course, the Prince of Wales, as well as the many other VIPs, including the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition, for what will be a very emotional but very uplifting as well commemoration celebrating the role that these veterans played in World War II, and 20 of those veterans will be here in Portsmouth for this commemoration. Others, dozens of others, have headed across to Normandy for the other commemoration events taking place on the other side of the Channel. We've been speaking all morning to senior military figures who've come to our position here in Southsea, and just a few minutes ago I spoke to the head of the RAF, Air Chief Marshal Sir Rich Knighton, and he really outlined the vital role that the RAF played in this campaign, because it wasn't just a massive maritime operation, it was also launched from the air as well.
Yeah, in the run-up to the 6th of June, it was imperative that the British and our allies were able to degrade the Nazi Germany's forces in Northern Europe, and over that period running up to the 6th of June, something like 200,000 tonnes of bombs were dropped over northern France. There were 2,000 aircraft lost, 8,000 crew were killed. And of course, because we didn't want to signal where the invasion was going to take place, for every one sortie that was took place over the beaches around Normandy where we did land, the two had to be taken elsewhere to help reinforce to Germany the idea that the Allies weren't going to invade where they actually did. So it was a vital role that the Air Force played in preparing the ground for a successful invasion. Absolutely, and that worked because Germany had to divide its forces right down that northern coast of France, because they just still, right up until D-Day, didn't know where the Allied troops were going to land. And as I say, part of that very much down to the effort of those brave crews. Absolutely. I mean, I marvel at the organisation to actually mount the operation on the 6th of June. But the planning went back many years before, and of course it was ultimately those men on the ground, on the sea and in the air who put their lives on the line to invade Europe and free it of the tyranny of Nazi Germany. And it's wonderful to have the opportunity 80 years on to remember all those who served and all those who sadly lost their lives on that day and subsequently. Yeah, I mean, how special is this event? It is incredible, given that the youngest veteran is 97. You know, many of them are over 100 years old, but they're still battling on. They still want to be out to be part of these commemorations. Well, I'm really looking forward to meeting some of the veterans later today and here in the UK and over in France. And I met some at an RAF base a few months ago, and their enthusiasm for remembering their friends and their comrades who fell around them is undimmed by the 80 years. And it's imperative for those of us who serve today and those of us who live in the UK to remember the bravery and sacrifice that these people made for our freedom and the freedom of the rest of Europe. So very, very important day, and it's a privilege to be here.
And sadly, because of that Spitfire crash just recently, some of the fly-past plans have had to be scaled back a bit, but you will still be honouring them. There will be a fly-past taking place.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's very sad that Squadron Leader Mark Long lost his life in a Spitfire a couple of weeks ago, and my heart goes out to his family and to all of his colleagues at RAF Coningsby. But the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight is enormously evocative, and the public love to see it. So it's a great shame that we can't be here today, but we'll have the Red Arrows here. We saw the A400M flying over the ferry yesterday as the veterans left.
It was an incredible sight.
And I heard that the veterans absolutely loved it. It was a really, really special moment. So yes, we will still, as an Air Force, be able to commemorate effectively the events and to put on a great show for the veterans and for all those millions of people who will be watching today right across the world.
Well, as you can see, I'm now joined by GB News Royal Correspondent Cameron Walker. Cameron, real excitement here, crowds massing now ahead of this royal arrival.
Yeah, there certainly is. If you look to behind me, the royal box is really starting to fill up now. We're expecting a number of very senior royals here, including the King, the Queen, the Prince of Wales, to name but a few. The Princess of Wales is understandably not here. She is still undergoing that cancer treatment. But also in Normandy, we have the Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, and her husband, Vice Admiral Tim Lawrence, carrying out a number of engagements today. Of course, the royal family has an incredibly important role here. They have a very important relationship with the armed forces. The King himself, a naval veteran, Prince William as well, served in the RAF. So it's going to be incredibly poignant, and they are expected to meet veterans as well after the commemoration ceremony today. OK, Cameron, thank you very much indeed for that. It really is going to be something special, as I say, as they remember the veterans. 20 of them will be here. No doubt they'll have a standing ovation and lots of tributes from the VIPs who'll be speaking throughout this programme.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark White. Cameron Walker there, remembering D-Day. Let us know your thoughts this morning, won't you? So Rishi Sunak came out swinging last night as he squared up to Keir Starmer in the first TV debate of the general election campaign. Here's what happened.
Inflation is back to normal, wages are growing, taxes are now being cut. Keir Starmer would put all that progress at risk. He would put up everyone's taxes by £2,000. £2,000 in higher taxes for every working family in our country. After all the hard work and sacrifice we've been through, that's not the right course of action. I don't know why you want to put up people's taxes.
It's unforgivable what's happened to the NHS, and to come into power for 14 years and leave the NHS in a worse state than when you found it is unforgivable in politics. And Rishi Sunak stood 18 months ago, Janet, and said that those waiting lists, which are now nearly 8 million, he said he'll get them down. He made a promise. He said he'd be held accountable. They were 7.2 million at the time. Now they're 7.5 million. So they've gone up, and that bears down on the NHS.
Well, it was often tetchy and bad-tempered, but a snap poll for YouGov showed 51% thought Sunak could perform best, with 49% for Starmer. But we will know what you think. So tell us in the newsroom. Let's bring in our political presentation coach, Graham Davis. We talked about this yesterday, and the pollster, Scarlett Maguire, is here too. Graham, we talked about this yesterday, and we made the point, didn't we, that it was for Starmer to lose, even if it was a narrow points victory for Sunak, not a knockout blow.
Definitely not a knockout blow, and indeed it wasn't compelling TV either. It was like watching two chartered accountants squabbling over a calculator. And we had two candidates, one of whom was trying to channel Tyson Fury, and the other, who at his most animated was more wooden than a park bench.
And the latter being Starmer?
Indeed.
Right, OK.
Yes, indeed.
Just to clarify.
What I don't get about that, Starmer is an accomplished lawyer. He rose the ranks to become Director of Public Prosecutions at KC. Why is he not better in that gladiatorial role?
In a Crown Court is a very quiet, calm place. You don't get heckled and interrupted. except occasionally by the judge. He seemed out of place there in the TV debate format. He's got a quiet voice. He's got a sort of back foot attitude. Sunak was deliberately trying to be as interruptive as possible. It certainly put Starmer off, but the key thing is, in the details of that poll that you quoted, I'm not sure that Sunak came across as overly likeable, and that might be crucial.
What I look for, Graham, in these debates is honesty. When you can look in their eyes and think, are you telling me the truth? There was one moment I thought was a flash of honesty when the presenter asked if you had a loved one on an NHS waiting list, would you use private healthcare? And Sunak just said yes. Because, of course, who wouldn't say yes if you had a loved one? And Starmer said, no, I'd use the NHS. And I was thinking, did he just say he'd rather a loved one potentially lost their life than use private healthcare? That's not normal, is it? Is it just dishonest?
Well, it's an example of somebody being a politician first and a human being second. But the interesting piece of conflict which I saw, which was most interesting for me, was when there was the genuine clash as to whether waiting lists were going down or up. And Starmer said, not unreasonably, well, clearly they're going up. And Sunak said, well, actually, no, they're going down. No, those numbers don't say that, said Keir Starmer. And eventually Sunak said, well, they're going down from where they were. And, of course, that got a certain amount of sardonic laughter from the audience.
Understandably. Scarlett, talking of the numbers, you've polled as well, have you, this morning? What have you found?
We found a slightly different result from that YouGov Snap poll. We found that people watching thought that Keir Starmer won the debate, and generally that he came across better. We did have Rishi Sunak performing better amongst the Conservative 2019 voters, who are the voters he really needs to win back on side. But no, overall, we had Keir Starmer winning the debate.
And what about the issues? Do you think they got the... Sunak talked tax the whole time, and I was amazed that Starmer didn't challenge him when he said your tax is going to be up £2,000. It took him till about three-quarters way through the programme to challenge him on that. So that, for Sunak, would be job done, won't it, on tax?
Yeah, I mean, Sunak had the harder ask because he's got a 14-year record to defend, and he called the election when he was 20 points behind in a poll. He really needed a big win. Keir Starmer just needed a score draw. But I think on tax, that was probably the right thing to go on. I mean, we know that historically voters have more hesitations about Labour's handling on the economy and on taxation specifically. And I think the Conservatives will be delighted that they've managed to get a single clip of Keir Starmer standing at a podium saying he will raise certain taxes, even if he then clarifies it to say non-dom tax, which is one of the most popular moments of the night, actually. We sort of tracked how people were feeling throughout the debate, and that was one of the few moments, in fact, I think the only moment, where both Conservative and Labour voters really liked what Keir Starmer was saying about taxing non-doms.
And, of course, Sunak makes the point they've already closed the loophole anyway.
Well, exactly, and the reason why they did that, I think, was because it's popular across the board.
Yeah.
There was no lightness, there was no humour at all, Graham, was there? And I think the British public, we have a very good sense of humour, even in the darkest of days, and we're looking for someone to at least make us smile.
Because Boris would have made us laugh at least once.
Well, the only laughter they stimulated was, frankly, when the audience were laughing at them, especially Rishi Sunak.
Yeah.
The most effective words that Rishi Sunak came out with during the entire evening were 4 words which he repeated again and again. What would you do?
Yes.
And ironically, he was very good at propping up his cross-examination skills with adrenaline in a way that Keir Starmer wasn't.
Yeah.
And Starmer's answers to what would you do were really quite vague. But the weakness of the Tyson Fury approach from Rishi Sunak is that he's very good at the TV debating technique, which is say it, support it, shut it. But he doesn't realise when he needs to stop talking.
Yeah.
When he's made his point, he keeps going, and therefore we had an awful lot where he seemed to be completely ignoring the rules, and unfortunately the moderator was like a struggling supply teacher not wanting to shut up the rich head boy.
Just 30 seconds with Scarlett Maguire. Is that a point that Sunak made very successfully, to Labour leader, what would you do? Because there is a lot of suggestion that it's vague. We don't know what a Labour government would do. His whole pitch has been the Tories have been hopeless for 14 years. Time to kick them out.
Yes, again, so what Rishi Sunak's trying to do is to tap into the public's underlying anxieties about Keir Starmer, which is that he's not necessarily, they say to us that he's not necessarily straight about what he's going to do. They don't know really what his actual plans are when he gets to government, partly because people say, oh, well, he keeps changing his mind on things. The problem is for Rishi Sunak, yes, people do think that and say that, but they've already had enough of him and they're willing to give it a go.
Yeah.
OK, all right, thank you.
Scarlett Maguire from JL Partners and Graham. You'll come and see us again, Graham.
Right, still to come this morning, we're going to be asking how we put a stop to political violence like that happened to Nigel Farage yesterday. In fact, do you even want to use that term around that? Is that political violence, or is it just some wannabe TikTok star trying to get her moment?
I'm afraid it's a bit of that, I'm afraid.
In the limelight, absolutely. This is Britain's Newsroom on GBNews. Don't go anywhere.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The Princess of Wales has said she's excited by a new report on prioritising early childhood, a cause, as we know, that she's closely associated with.
Yes, the task force findings claim that the UK could reap £45.5 billion in economic benefits if firms prioritise early childhood.
Well, let's talk about this now with our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Good morning, Cameron.
Good morning.
I suppose it's characteristically Catherine, isn't it, to say she doesn't want to distract from this report by sort of people talking about her health. But we should start probably by saying she said she's not feeling well enough to come and talk about this in public, but sort of saying she's watching it, keeping a close eye from behind closed doors.
Yeah, absolutely. This should not be seen as a return to work by the Princess of Wales, but I have been told she's A, read the report and B, been briefed on it. But this all stems really from her work when she started being a working member of the royal family, where she was working closely with people suffering from addiction, mental health problems. And what she found is all of these issues tend to stem from a poor start in life, so the first 5 years of a child's life. So in January 2023, she set up Shaping Us, this awareness campaign for the early years. 2 months later, she convened the Business Task Force, so 8 members of big businesses across the UK, and over a generation, that could add, as they claim, more than £40 billion to the UK economy each year. We spoke to Peter Grigg yesterday. He's the chair of Home Starts UK, a charity which supports young families. Let's hear what he said about the Princess's role in this.
She's been a real driving force behind the report and everything it's done. And when we've spent time with the Royal Foundation, what it does, it reminds everyone that this is really important work and early childhood matters, that more businesses should get involved, that more charities are out there for people who want to do more to support families and children. So it's been a wonderful experience.
The People's Channel.
This is GB News and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
all sides
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's election channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on. Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
10:26.
And Stephen Pound.
Got all the girls in, nattering. Look at them.
Stephen Pound wittering on in the corner.
Wittering? Chuntering.
Stephen Pound.
Wittering from a sedentary position.
And Mike Perry are with us in the studio.
Thank you.
I will get to your comments in a minute, because a lot of you are very cross with Andrew Pearce for the conversation that you had with Richard Tice.
Oh, right.
But we will get to them, don't you worry. But let's talk about that with our ladies now, shall we? Stephen, let's start with Nigel Farage yesterday getting the milkshake in the face. It's fairly comic. He made the best he could of it with doing a little TikTok video afterwards. But there is a really serious
Well, if you just go down the coast of it, you come to Southend, and that's where David Amos was killed.
Yes, that's right.
Correct. And it's just a little bit down the coast. Yeah, there is a comic attitude, and I think this woman, was it Victoria Thomas Bowen, the woman who's a model and part-time.
She's an influencer, actually.
OnlyFans account.
Exactly.
Claims to be an influencer.
I think she's after the publicity, but I think what is stupid about this is that it is actually very dangerous. But on the other hand, I think to myself, Farage has done it again. He's somehow got the entire nation expressing their sympathy for him. Now, I'm not suggesting for a moment that he bribed her to sling the...
No, but he didn't.
Of course he didn't. We're joking about that. Yeah. But in some ways, now the whole nation is just saying, this is so unfair. I think she has been made to look stupid, risible, aggressive and unpleasant, and he has been made to look decent and actually a person who tolerates this and puts up with it. And he didn't hit her.
And he handled it very well.
Oh, yeah.
Because he then mocked what happened to him in a video, and he did it very cleverly, because he's whatever you think about Nigel, he's a class act.
Oh, yeah, when you think, I mean, somebody's paid, what, £4.50, I think, for one of those milkshakes? About £4.
It's quite a lot of money to throw at someone,
just swing it away.
During a cost of living crisis.
I know.
Well, she's probably complaining about the stupid influencer who threw it.
I know.
Yeah.
I hope she gets prosecuted. She's been charged with assault, so it's an alleged assault at the moment, OK? Right. She's been charged. I hope it goes through. Because can you imagine the split second after the liquid hit Nigel's face? The fear that goes through your head is, what is that? Is that battery acid? Now, I did a year or two in Northern Ireland at the height of the Troubles, right? When you see those petrol bombs coming over, right, you don't know where they're going to explode or blow up or whether they're going to leak and all that kind of... It's a terrifying thing to have things thrown at you from somebody without purpose, you see what I mean? Because you have no reflexive action to defend yourself if you don't know where it's coming from. It's a hideous thing to do. But what I think it illustrates, as Steve's already spotted, that's the biggest turnout of any crowd in this country for any MP who wants to join Parliament that we've seen in this election so far. She's made it an even bigger event by what she did, and it now looks like he's on a roll of popularity.
You made a good point about the acid, because, you know, we've had a spate of people hurling acid in people's face, and you get life-changing injuries. When a liquid hits you in the face, for that split second, what on earth do you think his reaction was? And I think it actually shows Nigel Farage up in a very, very good light.
I agree.
He didn't panic, he didn't turn away,
and
he didn't run.
this has happened to him before.
Yeah, it's happened to him before.
Did you know, by the way, sorry, Stephen, outside of India, in the UK, we are the country in the world where most acid attacks take place. So that means it is available in our society, and who knows if next time somebody gets very irate, they don't get hold of it. That's why I think it's so dangerous.
We've imported a lot of people from the cultures.
Yeah, exactly. And it's why Nigel has to have security protection with him the whole time.
I think he will have it. I don't think it's acceptable anywhere in the world to do that. It's foul and it's ghastly. But we do seem to have a spate of it in this country, which is horrific.
Listen, can we talk about the debate last night as well, Stephen? What did you make of it? Who did you watch it?
Yes, I did. And I think probably the most interesting thing was, as you know, with a budget, it's not on the night, it's always what happens the next day. And I think on the night, Rishi Sunak was a little bit tetchy, and I think that...
He often is.
Keir Starmer, he didn't actually respond to this tax thing. It's only this morning that we discover that this great figure of additional tax money is not from the Treasury. The Treasury have actually denied it. They've written to Darren Jones and the Labour Treasury team today saying this is not from the Treasury.
It was special advisers.
This is a couple of Tory special advisers.
Who work in the Treasury but are political.
Well, I'm sorry, it is. I agree. It is not a Treasury-approved statement.
But what I don't understand, Stephen, is why the Leader of the Opposition was so useless at not batting it away.
No, I totally agree. The point is, it's got on the front pages of all the papers this morning. This is the Times. Labour accused on taxes. Soon comes out fighting. But if you look at the Daily Express, they actually got the figure, £2,000. Now, you know the old saying that, you know, a lie goes round the world before the truth has got his boots on. So it doesn't really matter what the basis of this accusation was.
Very cynical. Cynical.
It doesn't matter what the basis of the accusation is. Rishi Sunak's now got it up there, and I can see people scratching their head.
By the way, Labour have put out a document saying that the Tories are going to scrap inheritance tax. They've never said that. So they've never said that.
I'm sorry, Jeremy Hunt, on the floor of the House of Commons on May the 7th, said it is our intention to scrap inheritance.
But there is no year. And they also said, the Labour said in their dossier, what I'm saying, Steve, is that both sides are as bad at this. They said that the Tories will scrap national insurance by 2025, 2026. They've never set a date.
No, they may not have set a date, but Jeremy Hunt did set the roadmap for it.
Right, Stephen and Mike, that's it for now. Sophia's
Too
waiting
short. You'll be
very
back,
patiently. You'll be back in the next hour. Here's Sophia Wensler with your morning's news.
Thank you. It's 10:31. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. The Conservatives are standing by Rishi Sunak's claim that Labour would raise taxes if Sir Keir Starmer became Prime Minister. Labour insists the claim is a lie. It comes as both leaders traded blows on the economy, the NHS and immigration as they faced off in the first TV debate of the 2024 election campaign. Rishi Sunak claimed Sir Keir Starmer would raid pension pots and hike taxes by £2,000 per household. But the leaders' differences will be put on aside as the D-Day Normandy landings are remembered. The nation is coming together today in Portsmouth to honour troops who crossed the Channel 80 years ago as they headed into the battle of a lifetime. Both Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer will attend the UK's national commemoration event in Portsmouth alongside the King, the Queen and the Prince of Wales and Armed Forces veterans. Meanwhile, across the Channel, Normandy prepares to honour the D-Day legacy and US President Joe Biden has arrived to take part in the commemorations. And the first banknotes carrying the portrait of King Charles will go into circulation today. Notes that feature Queen Elizabeth II will remain legal tender and co-circulate alongside the King. The new ones will only be printed to replace those that are worn or to meet any overall increase in demand in order to minimise the environmental and financial impact of the change. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2773 and €1.1747. The price of gold is £1,826 and 46 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 8,242 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Up next, we're going to be crossing back over to Normandy and Portsmouth, where commemorations are taking place ahead of the 80th anniversary of D-Day. That and a lot more. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The M74 in South Lanarkshire is partly blocked northbound by an accident between junctions 2 and 1A from Rutherglen to Portmaddy. There are queues from junction 3, and in Rutherglen the A749 is closed along Stonelaw Road after a lorry hit the railway bridge. In County Durham, the A66 is closed eastbound from Bowes to Barnard Castle after an accident causing queues. On the M1 in Leicestershire, there are northbound queues after traffic was stopped at junction 22 at Ashby de la Zouche after an accident. There are delays of up to an hour with some cancelled trains on the West Coast Main Line into and out of Euston Station in London after an incident earlier. On the M25 in Surrey, there's a lane closed clockwise where a vehicle caught fire between junctions 10 and 9 from the A3 to Leatherhead, causing delays. And on the M3 in Surrey, 3 out of 4 lanes closed southbound after a vehicle fire between junctions 3 and 4 from Bagshot to Camberley, causing queues. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Angela, what's on the menu?
Well, the menu today really is the battle between King Charles and Prince Andrew about his home, a royal lodge. It's gone on for quite a long time now because increasingly the place looks very dilapidated. No paint, raw under the family, under the way that the whole thing's built, and it's. King Charles gives him £3 million a year to have safety, and also another million just to keep it going. And it costs about £400,000 a month to keep the place going.
Really?
So it is ridiculous that he's there. And I think it's like anybody. You get to a certain age, his daughters don't stay there because they stay in London, you get to age when you downgrade. And it's not a big deal, it's not hopeless, it's actually gives you a fresh feeling. And I think it's very silly that he won't do it, but he's determined not to, and the King is determined to, and it seems that if he doesn't listen and make all these decorations properly, that he's going to stop giving him the money, which would be very difficult indeed for him.
Because every 5 years, isn't he meant to paint the outside and all sorts of things?
And the Queen didn't give him much money in her will. It all goes to the heir. So Charles has got the money. And so, you just wonder how he'll manage, because he's only got, what he can do.
How he'll manage? He can move somewhere cheaper like the rest of us. I mean, £400,000 a month.
Yeah.
You could go to Frogmore Cottage, which is the offer.
Yes, exactly. That's the offer. And it's all been very decorated. Apparently Meghan did it very nicely. It's much smaller, but it's also very carefully guarded. So he should be able to do that.
The People's Channel.
So Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer, they're putting aside their political differences, which were very evident last night, of course. They're joining the King and other senior members of the royal family in marking the 80th anniversary of D-Day. They'll be in the south coast of England. In fact, they're arriving now.
So here is our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker, who is in Portsmouth. Good morning, Cameron. What can you see there?
Good morning, Bev. Well, it might be a little bit noisy here because this is a 79-piece orchestra made up of military musicians providing the pre-commemoration entertainment, as it were. They're going to be joined by 25 members of a choir as well as Royal Marines drummers. You mentioned leader of the opposition and the Prime Minister putting aside their political differences. If we look to the royal box, I can tell you that Sir Keir Starmer has already taken his seat, fresh from that TV debate last night. Foreign Secretary David Cameron has also been spotted in the royal box so far as well. And in the next 20 minutes or so, they are going to be joined by His Majesty the King, the Queen, and His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales too. The Princess of Wales is not here, understandably. She is still recovering from her cancer treatment. But of course, the royal family has an incredibly important role here today. They have a very special relationship with the armed forces, and it's been revealed this morning that His Majesty the King has read extracts from his grandfather, King George VI's diary to 4 military veterans who he met at Buckingham Palace. Now, those 4 military veterans actually took part in the D-Day landings. They are Arthur Orban, John Dennett, Bernard Morgan and Jim Miller. And they were talking about the mementos that they took to them on the beach, took with them even on the beaches of Normandy. So, for example, some lucky football boots were strapped to the back of one of these veterans' backpacks, which he took with him on the boats going across to Normandy and then stormed the beaches. The King was visibly moved by that. We're going to be seeing videos of that later on. And another veteran, he had his dog tag, which is still covered in blood from when he was shot. He was shot in the lung. He was saved by his friend Walter, and sadly the next day, on June 7th, 1944, Walter was killed in that fighting in the Battle of Normandy, D-Day +1. So it is going to be incredibly poignant here today. We also are joined, as well as the royal family, by a number of local school children. They've been invited especially from the Portsmouth area by the Ministry of Defence, because it's understood both the Ministry of Defence and perhaps by extension the King and the Prince of Wales think it's incredibly important for the younger generation to learn about the sacrifices of their forefathers when it comes to D-Day and how that ultimately changed the course of the Second World War. Commemorations here in Portsmouth due to start at 11 o'clock in the morning, so in about 20 minutes' time.
Well, thanks for that, Cameron. That's Cameron Walker. We'll be back with him later in Portsmouth. We're going to go to Normandy now to speak to our reporter, Sophie Reaper, where the atmosphere is getting better and better. Sophie, what's happening there now, Sophie? Morning again.
Good morning to you both again. Yes, we've actually made it now onto the sand on Gold Beach here in Arromanches on the Normandy coastline. Now you'll see over my right-hand shoulder that we've been joined on the sand by an amphibious vehicle nicknamed as a duck. Now that is a vehicle that would have been used, a replica of a vehicle that would have been used on D-Day to transport troops from the Channel onto land. Now my team and myself were lucky enough to be able to take a journey on that particular vehicle yesterday to experience what it would have been like coming in from the Channel. Of course, nothing in compared to what our troops experienced, but it was truly an incredible amazing experience. One can't even put it into words how amazing it was. Now, on board that vehicle, they have roses, which tomorrow they'll be scattering in the Channel as a mark of respect for our troops that fell all those years ago on D-Day. That is just one of the ways that people here in Normandy will be showing their respect. Of course, thousands of people here will be showing their respect in their own individual, unique way. We spoke to one person from the British Army earlier on, and he told us about what he's been up to.
So D-Day 80 is hugely significant because, sadly, the numbers of living Normandy veterans are now dwindling. And it's really important that their legacy, that the message of what it takes to win a victory like this is passed on to the younger generations for a whole many reasons, one of which is, of course, to try and avoid the situation where it might happen again. So there's something tremendously powerful about D-Day 80, and if we can play, even in the smallest part, our role in trying to help get that message out and connect the younger generations with what happened here 80 years ago, as well as reintroduce the veterans to the things that they see and remember, to us that's enormously special, and it's just the most incredible privilege.
You mentioned the younger generations. Of course, that's so important, but stats show that not a lot of the younger generation even really know what D-Day is. Do you think that this kind of thing is going to have a real impact on that?
I hope it does. I hope that where families are able to spend some time here in Arromanches or in the wider Normandy area, or any one of the events in and around the UK and the other allied nations, that if they can start to feel and realise what happened 80 years ago and understand that, only good can come from that.
You heard there the importance of keeping the younger generations involved in the remembrance of D-Day. And while we've been here in Normandy over the past few days, we've seen plenty of children, families, lots of school trips as well. So clearly that is something that is happening, trying to get the younger generations invested in making sure that we never forget those troops who sacrificed themselves for our freedom.
OK, thank you very much, Sophie Reaper there in Normandy. One of our viewers at home, Barry, has said, Con has said, why don't they make D-Day a bank holiday? Remembrance and celebrations throughout the UK will be the highest respect for all ages.
And when you consider we have two bank holidays in May, you could even move one, couldn't you?
That's right. And John has said...
Because I've never understood why we have one on May the 1st, which is the May Day rally, which they hold in the old Soviet Union.
Yeah. John has said, lovely to see young reporter Sophie Reaper taking in the atmosphere and learning everything about our brave servicemen and women that lost their lives and saved Europe. We will be reading your messages, but it's been a very busy morning here, of course, on GB News. And up next, Welsh First Minister Vaughan Gething won't be at the D-Day celebrations in Portsmouth today, unlike his British counterparts, and we'll tell you why. It's a big day for him. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello and welcome along to the latest update from the Met Office. Cool winds for many of us today, along with showers. Although the showers won't affect everyone, it's going to be mostly fine in the south. Certainly we start off with some early sunshine across East Anglia, South and South East England. The cloud will build through the morning, and by the afternoon most places are rather cloudy, although there will be some brighter spells coming through at times. It's not going to feel particularly warm because we've got this cool and blustery northwesterly breeze, most notable across Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England. That's where the bulk of the showers will be moving in. Some of these showers will be lively with perhaps some hail and thunder in the far northwest, where it's going to be just 11 or 12 Celsius. In the south, mid to high teens, and where we get some sunshine and shelter from the winds, pleasant enough, but not particularly pleasant across Scotland. Those showers will be moving in swiftly through the day. Cold enough for some snow to be falling from those showers above around 600 metres for the Scottish mountains. Now for Northern Ireland, the showers will be on and off through the day, interspersed by brighter spells, some heavy rain appearing for Cumbria and Lancashire at times. But for parts of Wales, the Midlands, East Anglia and the south of England, fewer showers, a greater chance that we end the day with some blue skies, and we keep those clear skies into the evening and overnight. As a result, it's going to be a chilly night in many places, temperatures dipping into the mid to low single figures, but there'll still be some showers. There'll still be a gusty wind coming through across northwestern parts of the country, and that will continue to drive showers into the northwest of Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England, North Wales first thing Thursday. Thursday is a similar day to Wednesday, so if you've got the frequent showers on Wednesday, expect more of the same on Thursday. Likewise, if you've got mostly dry, fine conditions on Wednesday, similar on Thursday. Wouldn't rule out the odd shower in the south, but that's where the best of the sunshine and the highest temperatures will be 16 to 17 Celsius, mid to low teens further north.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, a big story in Wales where the First Minister, he's only been First Minister for about 80 days, faces a no-confidence vote this afternoon after weeks of rows over his campaign donations. He says he's not expecting to lose the vote. However, it's 30 Labour members and 30 other members, Tories, Welsh, Plaid, Liberal Democrat. So we went to Abergavenny in Wales to hear what you think about him.
It's a bit naughty, though, isn't it? I think to get... money from, I think he's a bit of a dodgy character, I think, isn't he? Or the company he's got, this fella, I'm not quite sure, but...
No, he'll be all right.
OK.
Yeah.
Let's wait and see how it goes.
We're joined now by Andrew R.T. Davies, leader of the Welsh Conservatives. Good morning, Andrew. Now, those people looked a little ambivalent about the issue, to be fair. They sort of shrugged. Let's see how it goes. How will it go?
Well, good morning, Bev, and good morning, Andrew. At the moment, who knows? I can control my own group, which has moved the motion this afternoon in the First Minister of having no confidence, and it boils down to three things. It boils down to the judgment, taking this massive donation to his leadership campaign from an individual who's got 2 criminal convictions, transparency around messages that were deleted during the COVID pandemic, because the First Minister himself, in his own words, said they could be captured by the Freedom of Information Act, and that would have helped the COVID inquiry understand the government decision-making around key policies. And then it goes to truthfulness about the dismissal from a minister from his own cabinet who vehemently denies leaking this information out of the government and says that integrity is everything in politics. She still has her integrity, so she's in effect calling the First Minister a liar. That's why we've brought the motion of no confidence today, based on his judgment, the transparency and the truthfulness of his actions since he took the role of First Minister.
The controversy over him taking a £200,000 donation, Andrew, from a convicted polluter, it may shock people listening and watching, but actually, when Welsh Labour members of the Assembly voted to make him the leader and First Minister, effectively, they already knew about that.
Well, other things have come out, obviously, in the wash since then. I'm not sure whether many members understood the criminal conviction aspect of it, but there was a BBC programme on Monday night that highlighted that the company that this individual owns is still under criminal investigation. And also, this company took a loan from the Development Bank for Wales, which is a government-sponsored bank, of £400,000 in the same year that it made a donation to Vaughan Gething's leadership campaign of £200,000. So it goes to a government-sponsored bank, which the minister, when he was charged of the economy, was responsible for, of £400,000, and then makes a donation to the campaign for the leadership of the Labour Party here in Wales of £200,000. If that doesn't smell odd, then I don't know what does.
Just explain to us, Andrew, if the First Minister loses the motion of no confidence this afternoon, does he have to resign?
Well, it's a non-binding vote because obviously we as an opposition party are putting the motion down in our own debate time. But I think it would send a very, very significant message that the Labour Party couldn't vote down a no-confidence vote in the Welsh Parliament. And I know of no other democracy where a confidence vote has been lost, where an individual can continue for any length of time. I think we'd look more like a banana republic if he didn't take any notice of this particular vote.
Chair of the Labour group, Vicky Howells, she said that 2 Labour members are currently unwell, and the Tories knew that before this motion was tabled. What's the latest on that? Do you know, Andrew?
That's an outright lie. On behalf of the chair of the Labour group in the Senate here, who also is chair of the Standards Committee, I might point out, we did not know anything about illness within the Labour group. I'm not going to say who the 2 individuals are. We have subsequently found out who those 2 individuals are. We do have hybrid voting here in the Senate, so you don't have to turn up in person. Right. You can vote either from your home or your office, as long as you've got a computer linked to the Senate. But Vicky Howells, chair of the Labour group today, told an outright lie on BBC Wales this morning. We had no knowledge at all of the illness of these 2 members, and where the motion was tabled last Wednesday, and I think social media activity does point to some of those members being out and about undertaking activities and responsibilities via their role as members of the Senate.
OK. All right, Andrew R.T. Davis, their leader of the Welsh Conservatives. It'll be an interesting one.
Fascinating, because don't forget, Keir Starmer likes to say, because Wales has been Labour-controlled, it's devolved, of course, it is the model by which he will govern. And if they lose the First Minister today during an election campaign, that's pretty serious. And he was in Wales only last week, Keir Starmer.
Right, the viewers do not want me to let you off the hook, Andrew Pearce. They're very unhappy with the fact that the way you had handled that conversation with Richard Tice.
Yeah.
Charles says, I'm a member of Reform UK. I'm delighted to have Andrew out front. Nigel out front, sorry, not Andrew out front. He says, Andrew, it's time you changed your opinion on reform.
No, I think Nigel Farage is the best they've got. I think they were absolutely right to make him leader, but I do to make the point again, it's just an extraordinary political party where the leader of the party owns it.
I think I'm all right with that, though. What's the problem with that?
It's don't you think members should have some involvement?
Well, maybe in the fullness of time, I suppose, maybe they will change the model. But I imagine when you have to start with quite a small team.
Normally, when political parties, say the Liberal Democrats, Labour or the Tories, change their leader, now admittedly the Tories seem to change their leader as often as some people change their shoes, they do at least consult their members, whereas Reform don't have to.
Is that not, though, because their members are so pro-Nigel Farage that they want him to be in charge?
There is no mechanism by which they can be consulted.
Well, keep your messages coming. GBNews.com/USA. I told you I'd ask him about it. Now, don't go anywhere, will you? We're also going to... The weather's here, but we're going to tell you what happened to those horses as well that were injured in London the other week. We will let you know. Here's Aidan.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome along to the latest update from the Met Office. Cool winds for many of us today, along with showers. Although the showers won't affect everyone, it's going to be mostly fine in the south. Certainly we start off with some early sunshine across East Anglia, south and southeast England. The cloud will build through the morning, and by the afternoon most places are rather cloudy, although there will be some brighter spells coming through at times. It's not going to feel particularly warm because we've got this cool and blustery northwesterly breeze, most notable across Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England. That's where the bulk of the showers will be moving in. Some of these showers will be lively with perhaps some hail and thunder in the far northwest, where it's going to be just 11 or 12 Celsius. In the south, mid to high teens, and where we get some sunshine and shelter from the winds, pleasant enough, but not particularly pleasant across Scotland. Those showers will be moving in swiftly through the day. Cold enough for some snow to be falling from those showers above around 600 metres for the Scottish mountains. Now, for Northern Ireland, the showers will be on and off through the day, interspersed by brighter spells, some heavy rain appearing for Cumbria and Lancashire at times. But for parts of Wales, the Midlands, East Anglia and the south of England, fewer showers, a greater chance that we end the day with some blue skies, and we keep those clear skies into the evening and overnight. As a result, it's going to be a chilly night in many places Temperatures dipping into the mid to low single figures, but there'll still be some showers. There'll still be a gusty wind coming through across northwestern parts of the country, and that will continue to drive showers into the northwest of Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England, North Wales first thing Thursday. Thursday is a similar day to Wednesday, so if you've got the frequent showers on Wednesday, expect more of the same on Thursday. Likewise, if you've got mostly dry, fine conditions on Wednesday, similar on Thursday. Wouldn't rule out the odd shower in the south, but that's where the best of the sunshine and the highest temperatures will be 16 to 17 Celsius, mid to low teens further north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the Great British Summer Giveaway, and have we got a prize for you? There's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's election channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Morning, 11 a.m. on Tuesday the 5th of June. This is Britain's News on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Thank you for joining us this morning. So D-Day commemorations. There are events in Normandy and Portsmouth this morning to pay respect to our fallen heroes.
And Starmer on the ropes? Well, the Prime Minister and Sir Keir Starmer went head-to-head in the DV debate last night on tax, the NHS and immigration. But we want to know, was there a winner for you?
And a significant no-confidence vote. That's what Welsh First Minister Vaughan Gething is facing this afternoon, and there's a very good chance he could lose.
King Charles, he's on banknotes for the first time. They're going to circulation today, and we'll be having a look at them.
You're going to get your wallet open, Andrew Pearce?
Well,
I'll be a first.
No, because things are only issued today. So if I want to get one, I'm going to keep it because it's history.
Yes, yeah, good point. Are we going to have some in the studio? We're not sure.
I think he's only the second monarch to be on the notes, the Queen being first, because people assume it's been going on forever and ever. But I think that's right. We're going to be talking to a royal historian about it a little later.
Brilliant. Let us know your thoughts this morning. gbnews.com/yoursay. First, to the very latest news with Sophia Wensler.
Bev, thank you. From the GB Newsroom at 11 o'clock, your top story. Commemorations are underway to mark 80 years since the D-Day Normandy landings. The nation is coming together today in Portsmouth to honour troops who crossed the Channel 80 years ago as they headed into the battle of a lifetime. Both Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer are attending the UK's national commemoration event in Portsmouth alongside the King, Queen and Prince of Wales and Armed Forces veterans. Meanwhile, across the Channel, Normandy prepares to honour the D-Day legacy. Chief of the General Staff, Sir Patrick Sanders, who's in Portsmouth, has told GB News about the jeopardy of D-Day.
So nearly didn't happen 80 years ago, and the gamble that Eisenhower took with the weather paid off, but it was a very, very different set of circumstances 80 years ago. And what always strikes me about these events is that this is living memory. You know, people who took part are alive today, and for many of the younger generation, this feels like ancient history, and of course it's not. You know, it really happened. So it's fantastic to be able to share it with the veterans who took part, but it's also important that all of us as a nation remembers the courage, the sacrifice, the extraordinary national endeavour that went into this, the largest amphibious operation in history.
The Conservatives are standing by Rishi Sunak's claim that Labour would raise taxes if Sir Keir Starmer became Prime Minister. Labour insists the claim is a lie. It comes as both leaders traded blows on the economy, NHS and immigration as they faced off in the first TV debate of the 2024 election campaign. Rishi Sunak claimed Sir Keir Starmer would raid pension pots and hike taxes by £2,000 per household. Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves says the Tories are lying.
Well, the letter from the Permanent Secretary of the Treasury confirms what Labour had said last night. The Prime Minister lied in the debate last night. Labour has no plans to increase taxes on working people. In fact, I have ruled out increases in income tax, national insurance and VAT for the duration of the next Parliament.
Meanwhile, Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho has reiterated the Prime Minister's claims.
Keir Starmer couldn't do is he couldn't rule out the fact that his policies, as set out by the Labour Party, would cost families £2,000 in extra taxes. And he couldn't rule out the fact that pensioners for the first time under Labour plans would have to pay tax on their state pension next year. And actually, that's the substance of what people are choosing between. And I really thought, actually, it was quite shocking that on all of those major issues, Keir Starmer was woolly. He didn't have any clear plans or proposals to address some of the challenges that the country is facing.
In other news, the First Minister of Wales has insisted he's feeling confident about winning the vote of no confidence he faces in the Senedd later today. Welsh Conservatives tabled a motion of no confidence in Vaughan Gething following the collapse of the cooperation deal between Labour and Plaid Cymru and a series of rows. Concerns were raised after Mr Gething accepted a donation from a man convicted of environmental offences. Mr Gething has also refused to show any evidence to explain why he sacked Senedd member Hannah Blythe from his government after he accused her of leaking messages to the media. American Amanda Knox is back in court in Italy as she tries to overturn a conviction for slander following the notorious killing of a British student in 2007. Italy's top court in 2015 annulled Knox's conviction for the murder of her British flatmate, Meredith Kircher, in the city of Perugia. Knox was also subsequently given a 3-year sentence for wrongly accusing Congolese bar owner Patrick Lumumba of killing Kircher. But the European Court of Human Rights ruled in 2019 that there had been procedural errors during Knox's questioning, and Italy's highest court last year ordered a retrial in the slander case. And the first banknotes carrying the portrait of King Charles will go into circulation today. Notes that feature Queen Elizabeth II will remain legal tender and co-circulate alongside the King. The new ones will only be printed to replace those that are worn or to meet any overall increase in demand in order to minimise the environmental and financial impact of the change. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
It's 11:06. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner. Why do we both look so surprised to be on the TV then? We do this every day. Sorry, the biscuits are out, that's why. Right, Rishi Sunak came out swinging last night as he squared up to Keir Starmer in the first TV debate of the general election campaign.
So Sunak repeatedly said, and wasn't challenged for a very long time in the debate, that Starmer's Labour Party will raise taxes by £2,000, and Starmer simply struggled to deny it.
But Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves has been speaking to reporters this morning and has had this to say about it.
Well, the letter from the Permanent Secretary of the Treasury confirms what Labour have said last night. The Prime Minister lied in the debate last night. Labour has no plans to increase taxes on working people. In fact, I have ruled out increases in income tax, national insurance and VAT for the duration of the next Parliament.
Is this becoming a bit of a dirty campaign, do you think, with tactics like this going back and forward?
Well, it's Rishi Sunak who lied 12 times in the debate last night about Labour's tax plans. The truth is, it's the Conservatives that have taken the tax burden to the highest it's been in 70 years. That is the Conservatives' record and their legacy.
It looks like the Permanent...
OK, so our reporter Anna Riley was out talking to the people of Hull to see what they think. Here you go.
Keir Starmer, obviously, I think he's doing the right thing for the, because at the moment the council and everything else is proper going downhill. There's a lot of homeless people on the street now and they need to be taken care of a little bit more.
And what do you make to them both? Keir Starmer first, what do you think to him?
I think he can be a bit of a bully. I get that impression.
They just want one fight, I think.
And do you prefer Rishi Sunak? What do you think to him?
I don't have a problem with Rishi Sunak.
No. No, he's all right. I prefer Boris, though.
Well, like I said to you earlier, I never saw the debate last night, but I think they're both a pair of wet blankets. I think Keir Starmer seen more life in the cops, and Rishi Sunak not much better, but out the two of them, I think Sunak does come over that little bit better, but only slightly.
In terms of who you think would be the best leader, would it for you be...
Definitely Keir Starmer, without a doubt. I feel like Rishi's had his chance now. He's not done nothing with the time that he's been there. I feel like, if anything, he's worse than what Boris Johnson was.
Sunak's had his chance and he's not done nothing. Well, former Labour MP Gloria Di Piero and former Justice Minister Sir Robert Buckland join us now. Gloria, let's come to you first in the studio. Is he right? Sunak's had his chance and he's not done nothing.
Well, 14 years the Tories have been in. Does anyone feel better off? Do you think your NHS is better off? Do you think your schools are better off? Or has this been 14 years of pain and high taxes? I think that gentleman hit the nail on the head. It's time for a change. Labour is not going to put up people's taxes, despite what Rishi Sunak tried to claim last night. That has been poo-pooed.
But let me interrupt you there, Gloria, because Keir Starmer is a highly trained lawyer. He's been leader of the opposition for 4 years, so he's used to the gladiatorial nature of PMQs. You host that brilliant programme every week with Chris Hope. Why didn't he squash the idea from start of Sunak immediately when he said £2,000 tax? That was raging throughout most of the programme till he finally said, no, actually, it's not going to happen.
I have a confession to make. I was screaming at the television and then shut it down. It's not true. Now, he should have shut it down earlier. It is a lie. It's a complete lie. The Treasury civil servant, the top civil servant in the Treasury, said, do not use these as our figures. What the Tories have done, the political appointments have said, we reckon this stuff's going to be in the Labour manifesto. They've said this in the past. Cost it, then we'll stick a figure on it. Actually, the Labour manifesto's not even been published. But I tell you something, everything in that manifesto will be costed and paid for.
But isn't that costing even the £2,000 is over 4 years? It's actually £500 a year, even by the Conservatives' equation.
Well, any tax rise on people who have been hurting so much would be bad, and you're not going to get it under Labour.
Robert Buckland, let's come to you. I'm sure you watched the debate on the edge of your seat last night. So just your general reflections on it, really.
Well, look, I think it was substance versus vacuity, and the substance was with Rishi Sunak. He actually has a plan. It's working. Why change that now for the blank page that Labour has to offer? And I really do have to take issue on this point about Labour's black hole. This isn't anything new. Keir Starmer should have been ready for this. Jeremy Hunt published a Conservative Party document a few days ago explaining the black hole that Labour presents. And it's not back of a fag packet. It's based upon commitments that the leader of the Labour Party and shadow cabinet members in office have made since 2023, and if anything, it errs on the cautious side. And with regard to civil service involvement, this is a regular practice. Civil servants provide the factual evidence, and then it is written up by the political advisors and by the politicians. Nothing new about this. Labour used to do it as well. And this letter business is a complete smokescreen to try and avoid the indelible fact that Labour have to pay for their unfunded commitments, and that will mean tax rises. And if there are tax rises not on individuals like income tax, there'll be tax rises on businesses, which means that jobs will be destroyed. Every Labour government has left office with unemployment higher than when it came in. This lot will be no exception, and we can't risk our economy in the hands of Labour.
Robert, you may think you won on tax, but you certainly didn't win on. He certainly didn't win on the NHS. There was just open laughter in the audience, studio audience, when he tried to say that waiting lists were falling, because you know that's one of his 5 pledges. You're nowhere near it.
Yeah, there's still a huge amount of work to be done. I mean, some of the longer-term waiting lists are being slashed, which is good, but that still means a lot of people are having to wait too long. Now, this is not easy. These figures have been really turbocharged by the COVID crisis, and I know doctors and clinicians are working as hard as they can. It'd be good if they didn't go on strike, by the way, and I think the audience were very clear in their disapproval of that last night. If we can all pull together, bearing in mind the record funding that we have in the NHS, my local hospital is having a brand new A&E opening next month, for example. There's lots of good things to be said, but that work clearly is unfinished, and the next government will have to redouble its efforts.
OK, Gloria, on the NHS, one of the strangest moments of the whole debate for me was when Sir Keir Starmer was asked whether he would use private healthcare if he had a loved one who was ill, and he said no. What was he thinking?
Bev, I think it's important to say that no matter, for most people, the vast majority of people in this country, if they faced that terrible news, you go to the NHS, your loved one, they need some cancer treatment, you're told that you're going to have to be on a waiting list. Very, very few people have the choice about whether to say, oh, it's OK, I'll go into that stash of cash that I've got locked away and pay for that loved one to have treatment.
But that wasn't the question, though, was it? It was, if you could use private healthcare, would you? And he said no.
Yes, no, personally. I mean, he said what he thought, what he believes to be the case.
That's sociopathic.
And of course, he can afford it.
Yeah, no, I take a different view on that. I mean, to Keir Starmer, I'll happily say that. But for most people, I think it is important. Most people wouldn't face that choice. They can't afford to go private. That's why we need the NHS working 40,000 extra appointments a week in
Gloria,
the NHS.
Wouldn't there have been more respect if he said, if it was that desperate, I'd sell whatever it was to keep my wife or child alive?
Andrew, this is it's a very personal question. I would have answered differently, but I don't think we can sort of cast aspersions on what Keir Starmer would do. I would have given a different answer, but he's entitled to his view.
Robert Buckland, were you surprised by that answer? Because my jaw dropped when I heard it.
Yeah, I was very surprised. I think it's a human reaction, isn't it? You'd move heaven and earth to look after your loved ones. And we can all, if somebody, violated or hurt or members of my family, I'd want to kill the person responsible. That's the natural reaction that we all have. Of course, we live in a system of rule of law and justice, and we all respect that. But the human reaction is to say you'll do whatever you can. Perhaps it tells us, I think it does tell us something about Keir. I've known him for a number of years. I respect the guy, but ideologically, he believes in the power of the state, and that means the state above everything else, to the exclusion of everything else. And therefore, in his attack on private schools, that answer about health, it all suggests quite an ideologically driven person who's perhaps more left-wing than perhaps... He's no Tony Blair, Keir Starmer. I don't think he'd want to be presented as that. This is a more left-wing leader than we've had.
Let Gloria come in on that, Robert. I think it's a really interesting point. So Keir Starmer believes so much in the state looking after your family.
The state is an interesting use of the word, because I bet anybody who's watching at home, or I could go out there on the street right now and ask anybody, do you believe in our National Health Service? Do you think it's working right now? Do you think after 14 years of the Tories, do you get angry and upset that you cannot see a GP, that your loved ones are waiting for treatment? It didn't happen under the last Labour government. We had record appreciation levels of our NHS. It was like 70%. It's 20-odd% now. So I believe in the power of governments to be able to make our National Health Service better. And my goodness, let's crack on and get on with that and do it.
Let's ask both of you, do these TV debates make a jot of difference, in your view, Gloria? You've knocked on doors after TV debates as a candidate.
Well, I'll give you one interesting fact. On the last TV debates, this was Jeremy Corbyn versus Boris Johnson. And there were snap polls, like there always is. And it was evenly balanced. Half of the people that watched thought Jeremy Corbyn did well, and half thought Boris Johnson. Look what happened in those election results. I'm not actually that convinced that they are as important as they were perhaps when they were new in 2010. To be honest, I struggled a bit to finish it, to watch it.
Robert Buckton, what about you? Do you think it makes any... I mean, what Sunak needed was a knockout blow because he's so far behind in the polls, and that clearly didn't happen. Some polls suggest he won a points victory. But do you think it makes any difference to how people will vote, or have they already made their minds up?
No, I think I used to say that election campaigns were very much signed, sealed and delivered before they began. But then a few more recent elections taught me otherwise. We can all remember I Agree with Nick back in 2010. And the impact that debate had. Of course, as Gloria says, it was the shock of the new as well. But then 2017, Tories 20 points ahead at the beginning. We all know where that ended up. So campaigns do matter. I think that the debate of itself isn't necessarily a game changer. It certainly hasn't done Rishi any harm, by the way. I think it's helped him, and there'll be a spring in his step today with justification. But I think that it's going to require more. And I think looking at the manifesto, the offer that the Conservatives have, that is going to be crucial, because I'm pretty sure that when we see the Labour manifesto, it'll be just a collection of empty pages. And against an empty page, I think the Conservatives can offer something exciting, bold, visionary, which can capture imagination and change the course of this campaign. This is not over.
OK, Robert Buckland, Gloria Di Piero, thank you both so much. It is not over, that is true.
We'll get you back after the next debate.
Oh, exciting.
Starmer, if he had any sense, wouldn't even bother to do it.
He's nailed on that, but he's doing too.
If he's got 20-point lead in the polls, why bother?
Well, he's committed, and I'll be here to debrief with you.
We'll look forward to it.
Right, still to come. Remember these horses? They bolted through central London. We were live on air, and one of them even hit a double-decker bus. It was one of them is bright white with red blood down their fronts. If you're listening on the radio, it was very memorable scenes. We've got an update on how they are. Don't go anywhere. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
D-Day was shrouded in secrecy. Ken Hay was days away from landing in Normandy and still didn't know what was happening.
I don't think we really appreciated what we were going into. Actually, on D-Day, I was on a 30-mile route march, and we see the planes going over and that sort of thing. And we realised that wherever they were going, then we got the news that, in fact, it was Normandy, and we knew we were scheduled for that.
He arrived on Juno Beach at Coursieux-sur-Mer a few days after the main assault. The soldiers' role was to push forward into enemy territory.
I didn't land on D-Day. I landed shortly after in June. I was in the infantry, so I was a rifle and I was up the front.
While on night patrol on July 7th, his unit was attacked.
My brother was a corporal in the same platoon, and he was out with me. He got back. 16 of us out of 30 got back. 5 of us got captured, and 9 got killed.
Germans put him to work in a POW camp in Zabas, Poland. With Soviets advancing, the prisoners were forced to march for 1,000 miles.
At one point along there, my leg was chopped. I lay down in the snow. If it hadn't been for 2 guys who fell back in the column and picked me up, I'd have just gone to sleep and frozen to death. 2 American tanks turned up on the 22nd of April, Sunday afternoon, and we were liberated.
Ken feels pride for the role he played in Normandy and thanks God for keeping him alive.
People say, why did you volunteer for the services? It was a completely different atmosphere then. You did your bit.
The People's Channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 11:22 with Britain's Newsroom and GB News. Andrew Pearson, Bev Turner. The panel is back. Mike Parry and Stephen Pound. Bev has spotted an extraordinary story in Louisiana.
Yeah, go on, Mike. Tell us about... This is about legalising surgical castration.
Yeah, to be honest, it makes me feel a bit ill, this. I mean, you know, it's the Deep South and it's the retribution of against criminals, and we've all seen the films about how people are treated down there. But basically, Louisiana judges could order surgical castration, right, for people convicted of sex crimes against younger children under the age of 13.
Right.
Now, I've got 2 views on this. One, as a disincentive to commit appalling crimes like that, I think it's quite a good idea, because all men fear, you know, the ultimate... snip. Yes, exactly.
Emasculation.
Emasculation, not snip. A snip, it just means you stop the process. Actually removing them, castration, that's every man's ultimate nightmare and horror. So if it turned out to be a great deterrent, I'd be for it, but would I actually do it myself? And that's always the test for me of whether you support, you know, an extreme crime like hanging or something like that. And I don't think I could be in the same room as seeing a man having his testicles removed.
Here's an odd thing. I think I've mentioned before, there used to be a Tory MP called Gerald Howarth, and he and I worked in Dartmoor Prison as prison officers.
Gerald
Howarth. From Aldershot. We both went in as prison officers to work for a month. It's a thing called At the Sharp End. And in Dartmoor and every prison, they have a thing called the VPU, the Vulnerable Prisoner Unit. It's basically where they put nonsense, not ordinary, normal criminal ethos. And a lot of these people were sex offenders. And this question of castration came up. And the governor told me, he said, you could castrate them, but actually most child abuse is not about sex, it's about power. And even if they were castrated, they would still be foul, vile people tormenting children. A lot of it is to do with cruelty, sadism. So
humiliation. That's you know, that's part of it.
Can we talk about something else on a sunny Wednesday?
But you know what? A lot of people won't realise. Alan Turing. We're talking about D-Day today. Alan Turing, who was the reason we solved the Enigma code. He was chemically castrated because he broke the law because he had sex with a man in his house, which was even though it was in the previous zone home, it was against the law. He was chemically castrated, and the state did nothing to protect this man who sped up the end of the war.
Exactly, and
then he took his own life.
And retrospectively, have never returned to the issue because of the shame of not doing anything.
I agree. There's a thing called aversion therapy. And I remember Bogart talking about this, where gay men would be shown photographs of naked men and then electrocuted while they're watching it to give aversion. You know, I'm sorry.
But isn't this a step backwards, this surgical castration? It does feel like...
It's medieval.
It is medieval.
Even like... It's like in countries where they chop somebody's hands off.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I hope.
But you know,
Louisiana.
The worry is it'll be very popular.
It might be, but the worry is also, with it being Louisiana, one of the crimes they talk about is incest against children. That's because it happens in Louisiana, and that's why, you know, they're focused on it. So it is an indication
this piece
of
was
the
online,
society that's talking about
and
it.
a lot of the comments underneath it were absolutely in support of this.
Yeah.
But then there was one comment that really struck me, which said, paedophiles, the problem is in their brains, not in their
exactly.
groins.
Yes.
There's a point to that.
That's pretty much what we discovered in Dartmoor.
Should we talk about the boy band?
Well, we should talk about the boy band, because this could be the start of something absolutely great, OK? Simon Cowell has announced that he's going to try and put together the next great boy band. Now, Simon Cowell is massively successful in bringing talent and bands to air. So the audition starts soon. I thought, right, there's 3 of us here today. There is Stephen Pound, there is Andrew Pearce, there is Michael Parry. The 3 Ps, OK?
The 3 Ps. Hang on a second. We've also got to hear the young lady say, we've got to have the blondie.
No, it's called a boy band, dear.
Yes.
Do you know what the boy is? We're not going to have that debate. We're not having that debate if you don't...
So 3 Ps.
The 3 Ps, that's what we would be called.
Are we going to be tenors, baritones?
Well, I don't know. You do know, of course, that I've had a record in the hit charts, don't you? I got to number 64 as lead singer with the Rolling Clones, who are a Rolling Stones tribute band, OK?
Is this a wind-up?
It's not a wind-up.
I
was
thought the
asked to join
Rolling Stones
them.
were a tribute band of the Rolling Clones.
I was asked to join them. We went into a proper studio. We recorded... I see a red door and I want it painted black. They released the record
anymore.
I want them to be black, and it got to number 64 in the chart.
When was this? When was it, Mike?
Oh,
1892.
No, well, not far after that. About 10, 12 years ago, I would say. Well, you see, I was a huge radio star in those days on Talk Sport, and they plucked me out for the publicity.
I thought you should be the...
And it was a success.
Who else was in the band?
Oh, well, it was called the Rolling Clones. They're a tribute band, you see what I mean? So they were all like musicians.
If we could be your backing group.
You could be, the middle-aged babe magnets, of course. That's what you are, Mike.
Yes.
You'll always be a middle-aged babe magnet.
Yes.
Listen, can we talk about these horses? The 3 of the household cavalry horses. Remember this, they were injured. They bolted through central London to take part. They were rehearsing, weren't they, to take part in the King's birthday parade. It now transpires that what made them startle was some building rubble being released, concrete, down one of those chutes. And look at them now.
We've got the 2 horses.
Quaker and Leader. I mean, the 2 of them having a nuzzle there.
They're necking each other.
If ever I doubted what country I was in, as soon as I read that there were 3 actual guardsmen injured on this, and nobody's talked. One of them is still in hospital, quite seriously.
That's right.
Everybody's talking about the 2 horses. Well, they're not talking so much about
all the way
3
back to the
cavalrymen.
Deal bomb, at the Guardsman's bomb in, was it 1980? Was it the Hyde Park bomb? The Sefton was the horse.
And 7 horses altogether were killed in that.
7 horses were killed. And many servicemen were killed, but people remember the name of the horse that was nursed back to life.
Well, 3 of the horses that were injured are now back at work, back on duty, and those 2 that we've seen are expected to make a full recovery, but they're being allowed to convalesce.
But what is so? What is?
I think a couple are going to be on parade.
No, 3 of them are going to be on the parade for the Trooping of the Colour.
Very good.
3 of the 5.
The Sovereign's
What
parade.
is so beautiful about that still picture, which we've just had up, is that at least one of those horses was due to be put down. They thought the injuries were so severe. The one with all the blood running down it as it was scalping around, they didn't think they could save it. They have saved it. It's not. We're not sure if these horses will return to work, but the commanding officer of the regiment says he very much hopes they will. So it's all round a really good feel factor story.
But I have to say, Leader and Sound, look, they do look as though they're in a stable relationship there, don't they?
Stephen Parry's best joke from being on Britain's Newsroom was about 2 jockeys in a stable relationship.
We want to see the album cover next time you come.
What, for the 3 Ps?
No, of your number 64 in the
Rolling
I might be able to find the video, actually.
Can we not?
There is a video.
Can we not?
In fact, if you've got a clever tech person and you've got hundreds of them, you've got hundreds of them, you'll find it somewhere on the internet. It was put out. Mike Parry and the Rolling Clones, paint it black.
What were you wearing?
Let's not.
Something to make me look a bit like Mick Jagger.
That's what I'm worrying about.
I think we should also ask our viewers, what would you name the boy band with these 3? Andrew Pearce, Stephen Pound, Mike Parry. Do send your ideas. GBNews.com/your say. Thank you so much, ladies. Now, though, your news with Sophia Wensler.
Ladies.
Bev, thank you. It's 11:30. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. Your headlines. Commemorations are underway to mark 80 years since the D-Day Normandy landings. The nation is coming together today in Portsmouth to honour troops who crossed the Channel 80 years ago as they headed into the battle of a lifetime. Both Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer are attending the UK's national commemoration event in Portsmouth alongside the King, Queen and Prince of Wales and Armed Forces veterans. Meanwhile, across the Channel, Normandy prepares to honour the D-Day legacy. Chief of the General Staff, Sir Patrick Sanders, who's in Portsmouth, has told GB News about the jeopardy of D-Day. The Conservatives are standing by Rishi Sunak's claim that Labour would raise taxes if Sir Keir Starmer became Prime Minister. Labour insists the claim is a lie. It comes as both leaders traded blows on the economy, the NHS and immigration as they faced off in the first TV debate of the 2024 election campaign. Rishi Sunak claimed Sir Keir Starmer would raid pension pots and hike taxes by £2,000 per household. And the first banknotes carrying the portrait of King Charles will go into circulation today. Notes that feature Queen Elizabeth II will remain legal tender and co-circulate alongside the King. The new ones will only be printed to replace those that are worn or to meet any overall increase in demand in order to minimise the environmental and financial impact of the change. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2772 and €1.1751 euros. The price of gold is £1,825 and 77 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 8,244 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Emily and Tom are here to tell us what's coming up on the show this afternoon, and we're having a big old gossip about last night's debate. What do you think of it, both?
An extraordinary statement from Keir Starmer about how he'd rather a relative was left on an NHS waiting list than go private, even though he's a wealthy man.
I was so disbelieving, I had to replay that on the TV last night.
I thought I'd misheard.
That's exactly. I thought I can't have heard that correctly.
I sought out the transcript afterwards, and it was shocking. I can't imagine Tony Blair ever saying something like that. I can't imagine the Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, even saying anything like that. This was perhaps a very ideological moment that we've seen from Keir Starmer, perhaps the most ideological moment from him since when he was running to be Labour leader back in 2020.
When he embraced all of Corbyn.
He could have said,
it raises the question.
He could have said, I wouldn't have to make this decision if the NHS was running under my leadership and all of this. But yes, of course, I would use private if it was a life or death moment. But instead, he just went straight for the ideological answer, didn't he?
Rishi Sunak said, yes, I would. And it was a very honest moment from Sunak. Would you use private healthcare? He just went, yeah.
I'm glad he didn't. I'm glad he didn't fudge it.
No, absolutely.
Remind us about the Dukakis moment, because
so in 1988, the US presidential debates was George H.W. Bush versus Michael Dukakis, and the moment it was seen that the Democrat Dukakis lost, he was asked a question in that debate by the moderator, who said, "If Kitty Dukakis, his wife, was raped and murdered, would you support the death penalty?" And instead of saying, what a horrible thing, I would want that person, blah, blah, blah. Instead, he would just go, no, I wouldn't. And you know that I wouldn't because I've opposed the death penalty. And he seemed so robotic and inhuman that it just highlighted a big sort of wedge issue there, and he never really recovered. And I wonder if it seemed robotic and inhuman from Keir Starmer last night.
But obviously, Rishi Sunak, lots of questions coming his way over this £2,000 tax bombshell claim that he's attributing to Labour's policies. He should have, yes. Why didn't he? Why didn't he have the letter? To wave around. That was a mistake.
I suppose one of the big question marks over all of this is how much does it actually feed through? The people watching are likely political obsessives. The people watching pretty much know what they think of both party leaders. It's not news to anyone watching that Keir Starmer's father was a toolmaker or that Rishi Sunak's parents worked in the NHS and in a pharmacy. But to the lower information voter who doesn't spend all their time watching news and keeping up with politics, they won't have been watching.
And
so will it have actually changed
And
anything?
Gloria DePiero made the point just now that after the head-to-head between Corbyn and Boris Johnson, level pegging, and Boris then went on to win with a majority of 80. So
we do know that around 5 million people watched last night, out of a country of 70 million.
Yeah.
Yes, but it leads the headlines, it leads the news bulletins, it leads everything else. You don't have to actually watch it to find out what happened in it, do you? I mean, we're talking about it.
Labour's attempt to clarify is drowned out by the noise from last night.
And if you were watching it thinking, well, I don't want to vote for either of them, it was a very convenient day for Nigel Farage to be all over the press as well. Because there's a place for people's protest votes now that there might not have been before.
That's true. I wonder, just as a final note on this, did Keir Starmer look a bit nervous?
I thought
in a way that a man 20 points ahead in the polls really shouldn't have looked nervous.
Really nervous.
Was there a bit of JFK Nixon about this? A bit pale, a bit sweaty?
Yeah.
I was surprised. And although I would say in 2012, the Romney-Obama debates, Romney was seen to have done very well in the first debate, and it was the polls narrowed. Then in the second debate, Obama was seen to have absolutely trounced him. So it could be that the second debate we see an entirely different Keir Starmer, a more confident Keir Starmer, and a Keir Starmer with his facts to hand.
I can't tell you what he looks like smiling. I don't think I've ever seen Keir Starmer actually smiling. People like you.
Big open smile.
A big open smile in a laugh.
Although when Gordon Brown tried that in 2009, it did not go particularly well.
Yes, but you should be able to. You should be able to smile. Look at Emily's face. How can you not love that face?
Some people tell me off for smiling too much.
Depends what we're talking about.
Tom and Emily will be here from midday. This is Britain's Newsroom on GBNews. Don't go anywhere.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Today we've got two fantastic individuals who have invented a teddy bear to help children who are suffering with mental health.
Yes, so Lynn and Samantha Crilly came up with the idea for the Trouble Muncher toy following Samantha's own battle with an eating disorder and OCD.
Yes, the teddy comes with a notepad and encourages its owners to write down what's troubling them, and then they can pop the note into the rucksack on the bear's back.
I struggled with mental health most of my life, actually, and oh no, it's fine. I've got one. I feel quite sorry for you. But and one thing I always did was message my mum, and it was a thought disassociation kind of technique. I would message you. Even now, I message you thoughts that come into my mind, but massively when I was younger. And I thought, what happens if you're younger and you don't have this?
Yeah, and I think in today's technology-fueled world, I think we go back to basics, and it just helps them to process by writing it down. Everything's so instant these days.
So it's like an indirect way of telling your parents how you're feeling, what you're going through. Such a great idea. What's the feedback been from parents who have got a Trouble Muncher for their kids? What have you got any stories?
It's been really good. In one household, he sits on the kitchen side, and I think during the day, the parents, the children put their worries in, or at night, and then they know that their parents will look at it during the day. And it's gone into some schools as well.
You'd imagine you'd want one of these Trouble Munchers in every classroom, in every school up and down the country, because children who are being bullied, for example, who feel like they can't tell their parents, they're too embarrassed to talk about it. This is such an important tool, isn't it, for children to communicate that?
Yeah, well, you were saying Mum's a mental health counsellor, and you had a young child who had Snapchat AI. So you talk to an AI in Snapchat, and that's what they talk to now.
The People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 11:40. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So, banknotes featuring King Charles' portrait are being released today. This is the first time our new monarch has featured on the notes. And in historical interest, I thought this was right. He's only the second monarch to appear on our notes, the first being his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, in 1960. People often think it's been going on for centuries. So there he is, bit of history on the £20 note. It's not my weekly wage from GB News. That's my weekly wage from GB News.
That's probably yours, and this is mine.
Battle of the sexes. But and on the other side, we've got J.M. Turner, the landscape artist.
Yep.
Who's on this one?
Of whom I must be a descendant, I'm sure, my aunt. This is Jane Austen on the back of the £10 note. So the back of the notes hasn't changed. Winston Churchill, Jane Austen, J.M.W. Turner and Alan Turing.
Alan Turing, who, of course, we were talking about earlier, who solved the Enigma code, which helped at Bletchley Park, helped bring the war to a speedy conclusion, who, of course, was chemically castrated.
Talking of which, yeah, absolutely. The first banknotes were printed last year. The long lead-in time allowing automated machines that accept cash to be updated to recognise the new design. So much has gone on behind the scenes. It's not a case of just changing the printer,
When do you think the photo was taken of the King?
I think it's... I mean, it does look quite like him. You know, sometimes you think if they said, what image would you like on the banknote, you might go, oh, can you pick one from about 20 years ago, please?
Because he's on there twice.
But he does look like him now, possibly a little younger, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
It's maybe a little flattering.
And grey.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Absolutely. So they...
But, of course, a lot of people want to get rid of this stuff. I love cash.
You can, of course, still use the ones with the Queen on for a little while at least. Right, let's see what you've been saying at home. Barbara, we were talking about Keir Starmer not smiling, not looking jolly, even though he should have it in the bag.
But also, all of us have reacted the same way to his extraordinary answer to the fact he would not ever use private health to rescue, to help save somebody in his family, somebody he loves, who's on a hospital trolley.
I found that the most chilling moment
If it was
last
the only
night.
way it could save them?
Well, the mask slipped a bit for me. It's a bit like the tax on private schools. It's about putting ideology before people. I'm a big fan of ideology, but at the expense of people that you love and them being alive. I just found that really chilling. Barbara said, Bevy's got no sense of humour or irony. Belly laugh. You'll never see him do that. Claire says Starmer was trying to keep it real with the regular people. Lol, of course he'd use private healthcare. Who wouldn't? I'm poor, but I'd take out a loan if I needed to get private treatment for a loved one.
Well, that's what I think most people would think, even if you... Of course, Gloria Tapiero is right, most people can't afford private medicine, but if you had to, somebody you love dearly, you would do whatever you could.
It showed not only what I just said then about ideology, but it just also showed that he couldn't think on his feet in that moment, for me, Keir Starmer. He couldn't be quick off the mark to work out...
Well, my answer would have been...
Speak from the heart.
Well, if the NHS wasn't in such a mess after 14 years of Tory rule, we wouldn't even need to be having this conversation. That's what he could have said.
Mary said, so Starmer wouldn't pay private for his mother's. That's what he's saying. He would let her suffer. I would pay private for my parents if needed. And he says that we've suffered enough under the Tories, but he wants to put up taxes costing us £2,000. I know he's saying he'd have to deal with illegals at the centre of the country if allowed. Well, Starmer, it's like you want to smash the gangs abroad, but you don't have jurisdiction. It's just a load of tosh.
And I'm surprised he got applauded when he said that he wanted to smash the gangs abroad, because Rishi Sunak did make the point that, A, that's what the government is trying to do, but B, measures taken by the Tories to try to get the gangs were voted down. Labour voted against them.
Yeah, I know. A lot of it just leaves a bit of a bad taste in the mouth, didn't it? Mike's, who is a member, thank you, Mike. The most notable thing with the leaders' debate last night was that Starmer could or would not look Sunak in the eye for 99% of the time. I noticed that, even when asked to by the moderator. Fortunately for Labour, there are pictures out in the media today that show him eye to eye during that 1%, but clearly Starmer was rattled and unconfident just by being there. He looked weak.
It is strange, again, isn't it, bearing in mind he's been a lawyer most of his adult life. Only became an MP in 2015.
Yeah. What else have you been saying? Barbara says, I've observed that people on the right have a lovely sense of humour, but on the left it's vile sarcasm. It's probably a little bit of a generalisation, Barbara. But I tell you what did show some awful sarcasm, and even though people might have thought it was funny, The picture yesterday of Nigel Farage having the milkshake thrown in his face obviously went wild all over social media. And people, even like the left-wing commentator Owen Jones, he put that picture up and he said art, a still of the milkshake arching through the air. And he said it was art. Now, if that had been a left-wing Labour politician being attacked in the street like that, the response, and a right-wing person had said that, there would have been outrage from the left.
There would.
Not good enough.
No, because as we made the point, that could have been something much more sinister and serious than milkshake.
Yeah, and Eddie said that Richard Tice was right to dodge your questions. They're still very cross with that interview. If you missed it, it was on at the start of the programme. You can watch us back on the GB News app. And, well, let's take a quick break while we have a look at some more of these.
Still to come, hospitals under attack. Our reporter Charlie Peters will tell us more. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather updates. Fairly cool and breezy day for many northern areas. There'll also be some fairly persistent showers pushing in from the north and west. That's because we've got a keen northwesterly breeze. Low pressure centred to the north of the UK at the moment. We're in quite a cold air mass for the time of year, so that's bringing that cool feel wherever you are. But it's particularly across the north and west. We've got quite a strong breeze where you'll be feeling the chill in the air. We'll have some quite persistent, frequent showers moving in to parts of northwest Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of northwest England as well later on today. Elsewhere across the country, though, for many central and southern areas, it should stay fairly dry and bright, but temperatures are going to be a little bit down on recent days and a little bit below average for the time of year. But I think in any sunshine into this evening, particularly across the south coast, it should still feel fairly pleasant. But across the north, a spell of quite persistent rain is to come across northwest Scotland, where the showers will turn quite heavy. There's also a risk of some snow falling over the highest ground in Scotland because it is cold enough, which is not particularly typical for this time of year. Showers still moving into parts of Northern Ireland this evening and northwest England, also into parts of western Wales as well. But across many southern and central areas, it should be a fairly dry and bright end to the day. And that will lead us into a clear night for many southern and eastern areas through tonight. Should stay dry and clear, and it will be another cold night tonight for the time of year. However, cloud will continue to build from the west. We could also see some showers moving into parts of the Midlands, southwest England as well. So temperatures will be held up a little bit where the cloud cover does continue through the night. But in any clearer skies, we could see a touch of grass frost by tomorrow morning. But that does mean it will be another fairly bright start wherever you are. However, the further north and west you are, the more likely you are to see showers once again through Thursday. It's going to be a pretty similar day tomorrow compared to today, with the best of any dry and brighter weather in the south and east. And tomorrow we could see highs of around 18 or 19 degrees. Again, a little below average, but not too bad in the sun.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, 11:49. So a cyber attack caused chaos in several London hospitals yesterday. Apparently it was launched by a Russian organisation.
So the former head of the National Cybersecurity Centre said that a Russian group launched the ransomware attack that devastated planned operations in London yesterday.
Analysts have warned GB News that the group has started to strike more British targets in recent months. And Charlie Peters is here to tell us more. How do they know it's Russia, Charlie?
So it was the former chief executive of the National Cybersecurity Centre, Kieran Martin, making this remark this morning. How does he know? Well, that's for Mr. Martin to explain, but he said it this morning with the BBC, and I imagine he has very close contact still with his former colleagues and those in the wider security apparatus to bring that information out. There's no confirmation from this group. They're called Quilin, that's Quilin. And it's rumoured and it's said that they launched this attack on Monday when they targeted a third-party provider to the NHS, and that's called Synovis. It's a partnership between SynLab and the NHS. It's been around since 2021, and they provide pathology services to several London hospitals. And those crashed because of this ransomware attack. Now, ransomware is when you encrypt data on a system, and in exchange for a ransom, you then give out the new password or the new access to the service provider. Now, when you target something like a healthcare system, that has devastating effects. And we saw that yesterday and also on Monday when several planned operations were collapsed in major hospitals in London. Guy's in St Thomas's, King's College London in Camberwell, also the Royal Brompton in Chelsea, a major transplant centre, all had to cancel planned operations because of this. And one medic I spoke to yesterday in Camberwell said it was chaos on their ward with people who were getting prepped for theatre, last minute being told it couldn't happen because you couldn't do the blood transfusions should there be hemorrhaging or massive blood loss. And this morning, speaking to a cybersecurity analyst from Sibylline, Kaylin Johnson, she told me that this group, Killin, that's been raised as the perpetrator, they've only been around since 2022. But previously, they've targeted Serbia's sole electricity provider, the court system in Australia, and also a Chinese manufacturer. The Serbian and the Chinese targets are interesting because those are allies of Russia, which does indicate it's not necessarily a state-aligned group.
That's what I was going to say. Is this linked to the Kremlin or not?
Well, so Kaylin Johnson told me that there's no evidence to suggest a direct link between the Kremlin and this Killin group. However, many of these ransomware groups, especially those operating in Russia, do have to act with the permission of the Kremlin because access to the internet and the censorship system there is so intense that much of the infrastructure is limited, especially for a group that needs to have the sophisticated level of attack that we've seen in recent weeks. We also saw that this group targeted the Big Issue magazine in March. That was also blamed on Killin. So what Ms Johnson said is a more of a targeting of European and British targets in recent months.
What's the objective? And why are they doing it?
The blanket objective is money. Ransomware is for profit. These are profit-motivated hackers. And they target these sort of soft targets because they know there is an urgency to de-encrypt that data, to get back in the system, because, frankly, it's a matter of life and death at blood transfusion.
So how do they make money from this? Is it about harvesting data which is then sold?
So there are two ways. You either completely collapse a system and you offer the person whose system is collapsed a way to re-access that system, or you steal data and say, if you don't pay this ransom, you don't get that data back. What we've seen this week in London, with 4 hospitals having to cancel services, it's more of the latter, a total collapse of the system. Now, sources to the Health Service Journal said yesterday that this group, Synovis, who have this link with the NHS, they reverted to pen and paper for dealing with blood pathology yesterday. So bad was the system collapse after this reported Killin attack. So that's the main method that they've gone for. It is devastating, and as you understand it today, there are still outages. Victoria Atkins, the Health and Social Care Secretary, saying that she was hoping to get operations back up and running in the coming days. One source said yesterday that this could take weeks, not days. It's an appalling situation.
But how? I cannot get my head around the inflexibility and the rigidity of a system that is so relied upon that somebody could be on an operating table and you can't have the human beings carry out that operation without the computer system working. Make that make sense for me, Charlie?
Well, so many ministers and politicians have spoken about bringing the NHS into the modern age, a digitisation of so many platforms, moving away, as we've said, from pen and paper into a quick data-driven tool. But last night has shown, and this incident this week has shown, that there are significant frailties with that objective. And as we've demonstrated, potentially also outsourcing to third-party operators is potentially a weak link and a pivot point that profit-motivated, nefarious cyber attackers can exploit.
Okay.
Extraordinary story.
Thank you so much, Charlie.
Very worrying.
Somebody sent a comment saying there was a cyber attack on my local doctor's surgery, but fortunately they couldn't get past the receptionist. That's it from Britain's Newsroom. Here's the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello Hello and welcome along to the latest update from the Met Office. Cool winds for many of us today, along with showers. Although the showers won't affect everyone, it's going to be mostly fine in the south. Certainly we start off with some early sunshine across East Anglia, south and southeast England. The cloud will build through the morning, and by the afternoon most places are rather cloudy, although there will be some brighter spells coming through at times. It's not going to feel particularly warm because we've got this cool and blustery northwesterly breeze, most notable across Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England. That's where the bulk of the showers will be moving in. Some of these showers will be lively with perhaps some hail and thunder in the far northwest, where it's going to be just 11 or 12 Celsius. In the south, mid to high teens, and where we get some sunshine and shelter from the winds, pleasant enough, but not particularly pleasant across Scotland. Those showers will be moving in swiftly through the day. Cold enough for some snow to be falling from those showers above around 600 metres for the Scottish mountains. Now for Northern Ireland, the showers will be on and off through the day, interspersed by brighter spells, some heavy rain appearing for Cumbria and Lancashire at times. But for parts of Wales, the Midlands, East Anglia and the south of England, fewer showers, a greater chance that we end the day with some blue skies, and we keep those clear skies into the evening and overnight. As a result, it's going to be a chilly night in many places. Temperatures dipping into the mid to low single figures, but there'll still be some showers. There'll still be a gusty wind coming through across northwestern parts of the country, and that will continue to drive showers into the north and west of Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England, North Wales first thing Thursday. Thursday is a similar day to Wednesday, so if you've got the frequent showers on Wednesday, expect more of the same on Thursday. Likewise, if you've got mostly dry, fine conditions on Wednesday, similar on Thursday. Wouldn't rule out the odd shower in the south, but that's where the best of the sunshine and the highest temperatures will be 16 to 17 Celsius, mid to low teens further north.
That warm feeling inside.
We've got summer sewn up with an incredible trio of treats, and you could win them. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. Fun in the sun could be on us. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message.